welcome back, man.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate you bringing me coffee.
My pleasure.
I must say, though, I do wish it was Swift and Finch.
I thought you liked Lumina better.
Oh, no.
Always?
Oh,
You've
yeah.
always
yeah.
liked Swift and
Oh,
Finch
yeah.
better?
100%.
Really?
Yeah. Have you
Why
been
not?
to Swift?
Oh yeah. Yeah, many times. But for some reason I thought you had turned Lumina.
Nah.
Huh. All right.
But,
Blake always takes me to that Sharp Sickle.
yeah, they're pretty good,
They're
too.
pretty good too. Yeah,
Yeah, they're
good
decent.
folks there.
We're blessed to have multiple coffee shops in Rome, but Swift has definitely got them all
Yeah.
beat, in
All
my
right.
opinion. So,
Well, I won't. Next time I'll hook you up just right.
yeah. I mean, I expected more out of you, but it's all right, Bubba. So we're going to get into the Colorado Trail Race. We did this back in August.
Yeah, man.
It's been quite a while. A lot has happened
A
since
lot
then.
has happened. A lot has happened since then. But in some ways, I feel like it's good that we've had a little time because I've really been able to think through the experience and learning and takeaway and all that kind of stuff. So I wonder if we had done it right afterwards, all that stuff may not have quite sunk in. yet.
Well, and I also probably wasn't in a place right afterwards to talk about it.
Were you angry about it?
I mean, it got a little ridiculous out there.
It sure enough did.
So, it's good to have some distance from it for sure because it was quite the adventure. And, well, if it would have been easy,
Yeah.
we would have been ticked about that.
Yep.
But I definitely would have enjoyed getting to ride my bike a little bit more.
Yep.
But maybe I just need to get better at riding my bike
Yeah, maybe. I think
and not pack so much crap.
Yeah, I think it's all a big hoax. They call it a bike race, but really it's a
There were many
pushing race.
Yeah, there were many times out there that I felt like this was legitimately a joke, and that they just put this challenge out there so that dumb people like us who are just getting into like mountain bike packing, that world, so that we would sign up for it thinking it was something legitimate, whereas all the people who have been riding these mountain bikes and doing these races for years and years, they just get to sit back and laugh at us for going and attempting this thing with a mountain bike.
Yeah, it is odd that this is supposed to be like one of the most challenging, biggest bike packing endeavors in the country, and 70 people or whatever the amount is show up to do it. You would think there would be hundreds. There's a reason there's only 70 that actually show up to do this thing, or whatever the number was.
Yeah,
I think it was under 100.
Yeah, I bet I think they cap it at 70 something for some reason, but I guarantee. I mean, if you sign 70 people up for something, you're going to have 50 show up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we don't know how many started because we started a day late.
Yes.
We did what's called an ITT. So in the bike packing world, if there is a big race like this, you can do what's called an individual time trial, and it actually counts toward the race results if you do your time trial like within a day or two, either before or a day or two after what's called the group start. All right. Now, if you go do an ITT, say a month before the group start, they don't really count that as part of the race results because if you were able to do that, you could kind of cherry pick weather conditions and temperature and all that stuff, right? You could look for a good weather window and you could say, oh, I'm going to go do my ITT right now. But if you're starting a day before or a day after, you're essentially experiencing the same weather conditions and temperatures and elements that everybody else in the race who started with the group start is experiencing. And the reason that we had to start with the ITT and not the group start is because on the website for the Colorado Trail, it said this thing never fills up. Yeah. Like, don't worry. Like, don't be in a hurry to sign up. It never reaches the 70-person cap. Well, the dude posted the registration link, and I think within like maybe an hour.
It had to have been fast because I was watching for it
that day.
Yeah.
I mean, we checked it that day, just, a few hours after it had, went live, and it was already full. So at that point, we were like, well, crap, we can't get in the group start, so we're just going to have to do an ITT. That seems to be our style anyways. We did the same thing on TNGA.
Yep.
And ITT, I think we started a day early on TNGA. But anyways, it really makes no difference as long as you're right there within a similar time window to everybody who does the group start. Why did you want to do this bike race, James, and kind of where did that all begin for you?
Well, it all started largely with, after you went and did Hurricane, whenever that was, that last year or 2022, whenever it was.
Probably, yeah, it's been a long time.
You went and did the Hurricane in Florida, and you came back talking about it, and then we decided to give TNGA a roll. And TNGA, that was the first time I'd ever spent the night backpacking. Was like bike packing. Yeah, I've done plenty of backpacking, but bike packing, we went out there. And man, I loved it. Loved the challenge of it. Love covering ground that way. And so as soon as we started hearing about this Colorado Trail race and that, 530 miles or something through the Rockies, you start in just outside of Denver, goes all the way to Durango, Colorado, along the Colorado Trail through some of the high country up there. I love Colorado. I love that area. I love those mountains, and the challenge and the beauty of it just appealed to me immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to get out there. I wanted to give it a go, test myself, test the bike, the gear, all of it, and just have an adventure.
Yeah, I heard about the Colorado Trail race from people who I had heard discussing TNGA.
Mm-hmm.
So TNGA is like our local, it's right here in Georgia. It's like the hardest one here in Georgia, right? And, there are a lot of local people, they idolize this TNGA race and they compare it to the Colorado Trail race. So that's how I heard about the Colorado Trail race. I would hear people saying, yeah, this TNGA, it's just as hard as the Colorado Trail race. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, here's another bikepacking race that's equivalent to one I've already done, but it's in a different state. So for me, my expectations were that it was going to be about the same in terms of difficulty to TNGA, just because that's what people say. At least people who have never done the Colorado Trail race, but have done TNGA, and they want to. I guess they want to make their accomplishment at TNGA sound a lot more than it actually is. Yeah. And that's not to take anything away from TNGA. Yeah, it's a hard race, but it is not comparable to this. But that's how I heard about the race, and for me, I wanted to do it just to explore that part of the country. Uh-huh. So you've done a lot more out there than I have. You've done work in Buena Vista, and you've spent time in other places out there for years and years. You've been going out there. I had never done anything in Colorado, never backpacked out there, nothing. So for me, that's what it was all about, man. I get to go see the entire section of the Rocky Mountains through that entire state, the best of everything the state has to offer, and I get to go see it in a few days, and that's what really drew me to it, to be honest with you. I didn't get to train the way I wanted to train.
Yeah.
Did you?
No, I did not. I didn't, and it was, like you, I went into it thinking, okay, well, it's going to be like, it's like TNGA. It's longer. But, we were 4 days or something TNGA. Yeah. It might take 6 or 8 days for us to get through this thing. And, I stay at a basic good level of fitness. I know how to handle my bike.
You've been riding bikes your whole life.
Been riding mountain bikes a long time. And just thinking, I intended to train a lot harder for it than I was able to, but just life circumstances, some travel, some trips that I had to do came up. And so no, I was not physically at the level that I wanted to be, but I also wasn't worried about it. I just assumed I'll be all right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you were, you were, I mean, you were much stronger than me for the majority of the race. For sure.
we would each have our days.
Yeah,
looking back, right? It was like
toward the end, all the days were yours, brother. I didn't have any. I didn't have any of my days toward the end.
Yours were, you front loaded your days.
Yeah, I did. I
saved mine for the back end of the trail.
Good night. And obviously I was, when we had kind of committed to this race, and we committed quite a bit of time in advance, maybe like 6 months or something. So that's one of the awesome things about our brotherhood and our relationship, me and you. I think we both know, like, we implicitly trust each other.
Yeah.
Like when I call you and say, hey, you want to go do this? And you say yes, well, I might as well mark it down in the calendar, like, we're going to do it. I mean, unless something takes us out, you know. And I love that about our friendship, because there's not, be honest with you, even a lot of people that I'm really close to, or I've been close to for a long, long time, you can't trust them in that way. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, and I feel the same way. You know, the reality for something like this is, like, it's a huge commitment of time, money, training. And if you and I say we're going to go do it, and we're going to go do it together, and then a month out you bail, well, that leaves me in a bind, and vice versa, right? And so knowing that you've got somebody that says, hey, I'm in, I'll be ready, let's go, and you can mark it, and you can put all the time, all the effort, all the finances into making sure that you go do that thing. There's not a lot of people in my life either that I can mark it down and say, okay, they're good.
Yeah, I know, it's such a blessing, man. But I was in really good shape when we committed. And, of course, I had the blood clot come up. That put me down for kind of the biggest span of time, that, like, the most important time that I should have been training. Really kind of toward the end of May, all of June, and basically all of July. I didn't know what my body was going to let me do. And that blood clot was so painful for about a month that even if I wanted to train, I just couldn't do it. I mean, it hurt so bad. And once the pain kind of subsided from that, well, then I was like, well, now I have to ease back into this and see how my body responds, because if I just go full bore off into training, you know, for the month of July, the month before the race, well, this thing might flare back up in the beginning of August, and then I can't go do the race. So I was being real conservative with my training all through the month of July, the month before the race. I wanted to train, but my goal was more, hey, let's be conservative now. Let's just get on the bike. Let's pedal. Let's see how my body's responding. And then at least be healthy on race day. That was kind of more my plan, right? But definitely was nowhere near where I was or where I wanted to be going into this. And that'll kind of screw with you mentally, man, you know?
Yeah, you know, we did that ride up in Tellico, wherever it was, Tellico Plain.
Yeah.
And I mean, you ate my lunch.
I was really fit, and my legs were so strong, man.
I mean, there were some long, hard climbs, and you would just peel off and leave me. And so I know, like, your fitness level was up really high. And then, yeah, man, you just had those, like, 2 months right before the race that just laid up.
Yeah, man.
It took its toll.
It sucked. And then to pile on to that, we get ready to go drive out to Denver. with all of our gear and equipment. And that week I get some sort of respiratory sinus infection. It's affecting my breathing. We're driving out to Denver. I can't clear my ears because my face is so full of mucus and snot. And so the whole time we're driving up there, like, I can barely hear what you're saying. Like, and you know how you're disoriented too when your ears are all clogged up and they get pressury. It was just, I'm thinking, the whole ride up there, I'm just saying, as we go, like, I'm waking up in the morning being like, well, could I ride my bike today? Well, yeah, I could probably get on my bike and ride today. But I'm just waiting to wake up the next morning and say, I can't ride my bike today and not be able to do this race. And so, man, that was frustrating. It was depressing. It was a lot of things because it was really hard for me to be excited about this. Mm-hmm. And because I didn't know whether or not I was even going to be healthy enough to start or not. Yeah. It was hard for me to get excited about it. It was hard even once we got going. It was hard for me to even enjoy a lot of it the way I would have liked to enjoy it just because of what I had going on with my health, you know? But it's just a whole nother level of challenge that I'm not used to dealing with, you know?
Yeah, man. Hats off to you. As we're headed out there, we're driving from Rome, Rome, all the way out to Denver. And I just remember you got snot just pouring out of your nose, hacking up. I'm sitting there trying to get as far over because I don't want to catch whatever you've got, because if I caught it, it's going to hit me when we're 3 days in, and then I'm going to be out. It was just, I felt horrible for you. And then even the morning we start, I just remember we got up early that morning and just heard you just trying to clear out your sinuses. I'm like, man, that dude is, my boy Chad is hurting.
Yeah, man.
But you did it. I mean, I really appreciate that. And I was thinking about this the other day, just in hindsight, like most people, even people that say, hey, I'm going to be there, I'm going to do it, given all the circumstances that you had leading up to it, would have bailed. I mean, you had every excuse, every reason, every opportunity to just say, dude, this isn't the year. And nobody would have blamed you. I mean, but you didn't. You had that mentality, mindset that said, well, if I could ride my bike today, so let's keep driving, let's keep going. I so appreciate that.
And you know what I think, as a younger man, I would have taken one of those excuses or one of those outs. But I think the older I get, the more I am aware of, the more I contemplate the fact that, man, our years are getting numbered. Yeah. And the reality is, while you're still working and while you're still raising a family, in your case, you have children, and you still have all of these other responsibilities. Each year, you only have the time and space to really fit in one big thing. I mean, a lot of people would argue with that, but I'm talking about a big thing that requires training, that requires a big time commitment and financial commitment. Like, you only really get one of those a year. And I think what drove me to follow through in those times was, man, okay, this is my thing for the year. And it's like, if I don't get to do this, then 2024 is going to be a year that is going to pass me by, and there's not going to be a big thing, a big story or anything that I had done, because it was too late by August. It was too late to kind of shift fire, and the calendar was already full for the rest of the year. So that was really driving me, just the awareness of, man, I mean, I'll be 37 here in a couple months, and no telling how, nobody knows. We may only have 5 years left. We may only have 5 days left. But in the best case scenario, I may have 30 good years left, and that's only 30 more big things. That's not much, man.
Yep.
So I think that's what was driving me.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll get right into it, man.
Let's do it, man.
The start. We stayed at a little hotel right in Denver. We found the closest hotel that we could possibly get to the start line. And got up early in the morning. We left our vehicle at the hotel because they allowed us to do that, which was awesome. Our wives were going to fly in later on in the week, so they flew in and they were going to pick the vehicle up. But we take off from the hotel, and we got about 4 or 5 miles, something like that, to kind of get down to the start line, which is good because within that 4 or 5 miles, we worked some kinks out.
Yep.
You know, you lost your glasses.
I lost my sunglasses.
I think twice.
Not even. I mean, we weren't even 3 minutes into the ride.
We're digging in the bushes.
4 a.m. in the morning, digging through the bushes, trying to find where my sunglasses flew out.
It was a nice morning, though. Temperature was good. You know, Denver is pretty mild in terms of conditions compared to what it feels like when you actually get up into the mountains, right?
Sure.
So got down to the start line. It was Waterton Canyon, right?
Yep, that's
Waterton
right.
Canyon. Elevation is 5,499 feet right there at Waterton Canyon. And took a couple pictures by the sign right there. There was only one other person there.
Yeah.
Remember, it was pitch dark, and there's somebody else there in a vehicle dropping another guy off with a mountain bike.
Yeah.
And we just assumed that this individual was going to be doing the Colorado Trail Race because his bike was all kitted out. And that was it. There was no, like, go get it, guys. Like,
nobody cheering us on.
Like,
no registration.
Good luck.
You don't sign any waivers. It's
nothing, man.
You just show up and, all right, here we go.
Here we are at this sign.
Take your picture and start riding.
Let's take off. Yeah, man. I mean, that first section was pretty uneventful for me. It was actually pretty decent riding.
Yeah.
I mean, all through the first day, really. Out of Waterton Canyon, it's just nice kind of gravel fire roads and stuff. And then we got on a little bit of trail and make it down to the Platte River was kind of the first thing I'm showing right here on the cue sheet. You got anything from that first section?
No, man, I was I was naive enough at that point to think, oh, this is kind of what it's going to be. And I mean, knew we would be getting up into much higher elevation, but just in terms of trail and terrain, thinking, all right, this is how it's going to be. We're going to be able to cover some miles every day in this, because we moved really good that first day.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you want to share this or not, but I know you did lose your tracking device, and we had to have a little chat down at the Platte River. So
I did.
Any lessons learned on gear retention or anything there?
So one of the conditions for the ITT, right? I mean, it's an important safety measure to have your tracking device, which is like a little GPS tracker, but it's also a condition for the ITT. You got to have your tracker. It's got to be on because that's how they hold you accountable that you actually did the trail. And so I had my tracker same way I had it strapped on for TNGA. I had a little carabiner through the strap and had it strapped onto my bike. And man, I'm bombing down some single track or something, get down to the bottom, had no idea that I'd lost it. And Chad comes strolling by a few minutes later and gives me the SEAL drill instructor what for on keeping my essential equipment strapped on tight. And so needless to say, I ran a piece of cord through that thing, double attached it every time, and made sure it was.
Yeah, and I don't share that just to like get a knock on you for that, but I think it's an important lesson for people listening. If you're going to go and do these things, or maybe you're listening to this because you want to do the Colorado Trail Race, or maybe you do backpacking or whatever, or even some ultra running. If you're going to be out in the backcountry, there's certain pieces of gear that are what you would consider first line gear, like essential gear. Like you cannot lose this stuff. And on those pieces of gear, you always want to, if there's any way possible, you want to have double or redundant retention, right? So double retention on those. And yeah, we learned that in the Navy with especially with our weapons. When we would swim with our weapons, you know, you would never just, you would have the rifle slung onto your body, right? But then you would have a separate lanyard going from the rifle, actually carabinered into your vest or whatever you had on, because anything that's essential, you want double retention. And that little Garmin InReach, you know, I was looking at that when I was putting mine on my bike too, and I thought, you know what? I see they've built this retention strap into this thing, but it all hinges upon that one little bitty screw.
Little screw, yep.
And all that vibration in the bike, it destroys stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, dude, the vibration on those bikes, anything in those bags, it just destroys it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember rigging mine up and thinking, I'm not going to trust this thing to that one little bitty screw. But at the same time, I was thinking, oh, that's probably silly. Surely that thing's got Loctite on it. And you see people backpacking all the time, and they're using that same little thing. It's dangling off their bag.
Yep.
And so while I was thinking through that and adding that second layer of retention or lanyard to that device, I was thinking, this is probably overkill. But it was good for me to see yours come off, because that's what failed. The screw backed out, because then it just reconfirmed, well, yeah, I mean, I did the right thing with this device, and the fact that I was questioning that shows that I'm getting a little bit lax about the things that I learned a long time ago. You know, I'm questioning, do I make the extra effort to have better retention on this critical piece of gear? Yeah, I did it, but I was questioning it, and I was questioning it because I'm so far removed from, you know, the environment that I used to work in, that now I'm getting slack on that stuff. So then when I saw it fail on you, I was like, okay, that's just reconfirming, yeah, this is what we have to do, you know?
Yeah, it was a good lesson for me, because thought never crossed my mind that screw would fail. So.
Yeah, for sure. So we crossed the Platte River on the bridge there. And, yeah, man, the first day is always weird for me, because you don't feel like you're part of the environment. It just, everything feels awkward to me on the first day, like, because you just haven't been out there in it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't feel like I belong out there. It takes me a while to kind of get into that, to feel like I really know my gear, and I trust my gear, and I know where everything's at, and it's sorted right, and I know the sounds and the smells, and you know, I know what the cold and the rain and all that feels like coming from the front country, going straight into that wilderness environment. Yeah, it takes me a little while to get used to it.
Yeah.
Just to feel like I belong there. And then where did we camp that night?
Remember, we came up on that. It was a perfect little camp spot. It was a little earlier in the day than I think we had originally thought we would camp. But, I mean, I still think we'd put in 70 or 80 miles that day. But remember, there was that little camp spot down at the bottom of the hill next to that river.
Was it? It's not even on the Q sheet.
It's not on the Q sheet, it's not on the Q sheet. But we pulled in there, and there was a great little camping spot. There was that river where we did our cold plunge and got all cleaned up at the end of the day. And and that ended up being a great little spot.
Yeah, I remember the spot. And that's what I was looking for it on the Q sheet, but it's not. Well, no, it wasn't Wellington Lake Campground.
No.
We went past that.
Yep, we passed that one.
But we didn't make it to the Stage Stop Saloon. That was on day 2.
That was day 2.
Yep.
Kind of early on in day 2.
So it would have been somewhere around the 70-ish mile mark. And we had a wilderness bypass also on that first day.
Yep.
So I remember a few of those sections, riding those gravel roads, and
yep.
could really put in some miles
Yep.
on that first day.
Yep.
And it was definitely lulling you in to thinking this is how it's going to be.
Yep.
Well, we pull up on this little camp spot, like James said. It was getting around about sunset, but not quite sunset. And we kind of sat there and debated a little bit of whether or not we were going to keep going or not.
Yep.
You remember that?
Yep.
And why did we finally end up camping there?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was just there wasn't, at least on the cue sheet, we were on that wilderness bypass. We still had a bunch of that left, so it was going to be a good bit of road, like gravel, dirt road riding. I honestly don't remember, but my guess is it was a function of this is a great spot, put in a good day, and we may not have another good spot for a long while. And it was getting to be dark. And
yeah. And what makes a good spot to camp?
Water. We learned that later on in the trail.
Mm-hmm.
But water, some kind of we weren't carrying tents. We just had our bivy sacks. So some sort of natural features, spruce trees, rock overhangs, something that can provide some shelter from a storm, because those bivvies aren't made for that. At least the one I'm riding with wasn't. And just having some space that you can move and get your gears resorted. And there was a picnic table there. I mean, it was like a legitimate camp area.
Yeah, yeah. I can't believe you didn't mention a pit toilet.
Pit toilet, that's the big one, isn't it? I forgot about that.
Is
that why we chose that spot? Because there was a toilet?
I don't think that was why, but I think it's something that is definitely highly sought after.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, if you when you're out there, if you can find a spot that has a pit toilet, I mean, you don't understand. A lot of you guys don't understand how like big of a deal it is to have a toilet to sit on when you wake up the next morning before you get going.
I mean, as we're riding, I was this way on TNGA too. If we pass a pit toilet, I'm going in that bad boy. I'm at least going to give it a shot.
Just give it a shot.
You know what I'm saying? Because if I can give it a shot there, and if I can be successful there, that's one less time I got to just hover and take a steamer, and I'll take that anytime.
For sure, man. Yeah, and the water there too, man. I remember sitting down in that water. It was ice cold. There were trout.
Yeah,
it's like a little river. That was a cool spot. And also our friend Lando. So we told you there was another guy at the start line when we took off. Well, that ended up being our friend Lando, and Lando is from Canada.
Yep.
Very experienced bike packer. And we ended up kind of leapfrogging with him most of the day on that first day. I had no idea that we were going to end up spending the rest of our mission pretty much side by side with Lando.
Yeah.
And I remember at that campsite, he rode on past, and he said, "No, I'm going to keep going." And we were like, "All right, buddy.
We'll see ya."
Yep. Maybe we'll see you again. And me and you start unloading our stuff and setting camp up, and here he comes right on back. Here comes Orlando right on back.
He had that little shameful head, like he'd been scolded, and he was coming. He's like, "Well, guys, I guess I'll stay here if that's okay."
Yeah. He got on down the road there, and he got to thinking, well, man, that did look awful good. It's late in the day. I'm hungry. And
he started thinking about that pit latrine.
Yeah.
He thought, I ain't passing that.
He came right on back, and that was cool, man. That was kind of the beginning of our friendship with Lando, and I think he added a lot of really good times and memories to our ride together. It was a blessing to have him along with us. We get up the next morning, and we start out headed up that Forest Service road. I'm guessing on here it's maybe this Highway 77, Forest Service 211.
That sounds right.
Yeah. And
I just remember it was a long climb out of there.
Yeah.
But it was all on gravel, so we made pretty good time. We were able to just spin, and we were able, you and me and Lando could kind of ride 3 across or two up and 1 back and have conversation and talk. And I just remember feeling like during that section, some purpose in what maybe God's intent was or is for this time, because of the conversations specifically you were having with Lando just about his journey, his faith, where he is spiritually. And it just, to me, that second day started what was a lot of conversation with Lando and opportunity just to share our lives, our stories, our faith with him. And I remember that morning as one of those times on the trail where I'm like, okay, this is part of why we're here.
I remember that too. Yeah, it was a beautiful morning.
It was
too.
Perfect. Yeah,
it was perfect. And this whole time now we've been climbing this whole way, and that's pretty much what this Colorado Trail does. It starts out really low, and then it just gets higher and higher and higher. And so now at this point we're up about 9.7. I'm showing Kenosha Pass.
Yeah.
At 9,990 feet. I don't remember going through that pass.
I remember. I got a picture of it.
Was that on trail?
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, the trail goes right over the pass.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And I'm showing Jefferson Creek, and that is where we camped at on night 2.
That's right.
Day 2 was a lot more, a lot of riding still.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, so Kenosha Pass was the first time we really kind of got up into some high country. It was under 10,000 feet, but we were, we'd gone from 5,600 or whatever Waterton was up there. And so we were getting some elevation, starting to see what that would feel like riding at that elevation. But we were riding for the most part.
I don't remember doing a whole lot of hiking or anything like that.
Yeah. We came down, and I remember there was a storm that was socked in over Georgia Pass. We could see it. And so we were trying to make the decision as to whether or not we should push on up and try to get up over the pass, or if we should just bed down there at the bottom. There was a creek.
That's Jefferson Creek.
Yep. There was a pit latrine. And and ultimately I think we decided that we would let that storm pass, spend the night down there. Yeah,
and that wasn't an easy decision either, because we got to Jefferson Pass early.
Yeah, I think
it was like 5 o'clock, 4 or 5 o'clock.
4:30 or 5, yeah.
Yeah, we got down there really early. And I remember we crossed that little bridge, and then we got on the other side of the creek, and Georgia Pass was looming up there in front of us with the storm on it. But we were even considering just sitting there and seeing what the weather does, and then potentially pushing on up and over.
Yeah.
And then there were some through hikers there, and remember one of them came out of the bushes, and you kind of had a chat with him, and he had been out there for way longer than we had been at that point, obviously. And he said, "Yeah, man, there's no way I would go up over that pass with the weather the way it is."
Yeah.
I think that's what ultimately kind of
sealed it for us,
yeah, because I still didn't know what the weather could be like up there.
Yeah.
But I was assuming he did.
Yeah.
Since those through hikers, they spend a month and a half out there, you know?
Yeah. And, I feel like that was probably the right call in hindsight, knowing what I know now. And after we were up in a lot of those passes with weather, we would have probably been fine if we would have pushed through. But at the time, felt like the right decision to make.
Well, yeah, I mean, we would have probably been fine unless a bolt of lightning hit us.
Right.
So we camped right there on that creek. At this point, I had got a little taste of, what getting up into higher elevations was going to do with this respiratory infection, sinus infection that I was dealing with. And I was coughing a lot.
Yes.
And I remember that same through hiker popped out of the bushes, and he was like, "Which one of y'all's doing all that coughing?" Like, I was coughing that much that it was getting people's attention. And I said, "Oh, that's me," and he said, "Oh, you smoked too many joints, didn't you?" And I was like, "No, dude, I've never even smoked weed in my life. I'm just freaking sick, man." But everybody out there is smoking weed. I mean, it was eye opening to me how many people are smoking weed out there.
Yeah.
I mean, like everybody.
Everybody. That's part of what. Yeah, it's like
it's
like culture.
Yeah.
Especially within that trail community. It's like, it's just what they do.
But that storm did not end up hitting us.
It didn't.
We stayed nice and dry down in there on the creek, and weather was still pretty good. It hadn't really got that chilly yet.
Yep.
Because we're still fairly low. Johnson Creek's at 99.74. And we get up the next morning and start headed up through the pass. And that looks like, according to the cue sheet, about a 5.5 mile from Johnson Creek to the pass climb from 9,900 to the pass is 11,877. And I think we pushed pretty much that whole 5 miles.
Yep. I think that was our first introduction to what would become our normal, everyday struggle, is pushing these heavy bikes loaded down up through the rocks and high terrain. And it was just a bike push, I think, that whole way, most of it.
And when we got up to the pass, the weather was still bad up there. It wasn't raining, but you remember how windy and cold it was up there?
Yep, windy and cold, and it looked like clouds were. I just remember we did not hang out up there. It was uncomfortable. It looked like there was storm kind of beginning to sock in.
Yeah. It was shocking to me, the difference that 5 miles made.
Yeah.
From getting up that morning at Jefferson Creek in camp and like not even needing to have a long sleeve on, to getting up into that pass and being like, holy crow, it is cold up here, like puff jacket cold.
Yeah.
That was shocking to me. And the other thing that was shocking to me was how difficult it was for me to breathe up there. That was kind of the first slap in the face where I was like, okay, this is going to be a problem, right?
Yeah, was it because we were up on Georgia Pass, and we're up in that high country, I think, for a little while. I mean, I say high country, 11,000 feet. But didn't we came down out of there into Breckenridge, didn't we?
Yeah, and I don't know why Breckenridge isn't on the cue sheet.
I think it's because it's off it's 5 miles off.
It's
the trail
off route.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember we were up somewhere in that high country, and you pulled me aside, and you're like, "Hey, man, when I'm gonna need to get down into Breckenridge and go to the hospital." And like, I knew you were sick, I knew it, but it surprised me that you were there. And then, I mean, I think you had already started. You were like coughing up blood. Yeah. At that point.
Yeah. That was one of the big things. I started coughing up blood.
Yeah. That's not good. When you're up in elevation and you start coughing up blood, it's never a good sign to cough up blood, but especially when you're pushing yourself physically 11,000 feet. So as soon as you said that, I was like, yeah, we got to get you looked at.
Yeah, and we had to have a serious talk too, because I mean, like James said, when we came down off of Georgia Pass, this town, Breckenridge, I think it was closer to 6 or so miles off of our route.
Yeah.
So that was going to add a total of 12 extra miles. And I remember, you have to have these talks and you have to make these decisions along the way, because when you go off into an adventure like this with a buddy, I mean, you don't know how it's going to pan out. So I remember telling you, like, hey man, go, keep riding. Like, you don't have to go. I'll catch back up to you at some point, maybe.
Yeah.
If I'm able to keep riding, but but you were like, why did you make the decision to just come on into Breckenridge with me? Because again, that cut our day off early.
Yeah.
It added a lot of extra miles.
Yeah.
Um,
The thought never crossed my mind not to, honestly. Like, just it's one thing if you could not, and I was thinking about that the whole time after we had that conversation, the whole time we were riding down, was, okay, well, to me, the likely outcome here is Chad goes to the hospital and they tell him the last thing you can do is get back up on that bike and ride up at 12,000 feet. And so as we're riding down, I'm thinking, okay, well, if he can't go, I got a decision to make. And so I was thinking more of that, right? Like what is my decision if Chad can't keep going? It just felt like I don't know. I didn't even really entertain not going with you into Breckenridge to make sure. I mean, part of it was just, I just want to make sure you were all right, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that was, when I started coughing with the blood and went over Georgia Pass and just felt like my lungs were full, like I just could not get air in. I fully expected the same thing. I was like, I was making peace in my own mind with going to the hospital and them saying, taking an x-ray of my lungs and saying, no, you have pneumonia in your lungs, or
Yep.
your lungs are full of crap, because that's exactly what it felt like. And I was making peace with myself that, like, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to keep pushing, because I told my wife that, I would be safe out here and I would make good decisions, and I want to be able to come back home to her. And I mean, some of these places, you get in a bind out in some of these places and you will die out there. Like, it's no joke. But I remember thinking, well, the likelihood of my race being done here is probably pretty high. And I'm like looking around as we get into Breckenridge, I'm like looking around like, well, okay, well, at least this isn't a bad place to
not a bad place
hang
to
out
lay
in for the next, week or so. Like, I guess I can make this work, you know? And there aren't any big hospitals in Breckenridge because it's just a little ski town.
Yeah.
And so all we could find is this little urgent care that they're primarily there for people during ski season, treating broken arms and legs and crap like that. But it's just a small little urgent care. And I go in, they get me in really quick, and I immediately realize that these are really cool people in this urgent care. Like, the nurses were really cool. As a matter of fact, the nurse that took me back and, took my vitals and stuff, she had attempted the Colorado Trail race a few years prior, made it to Buena Vista, and she said her husband wanted to quit, and she couldn't get him to go any further, so she just quit with him. And so really cool people. They understood, what we were out there doing, that made me feel really comfortable too. Like, okay, I'm going to be able to trust the advice that these people give me on whether to go or not go, because they understand what I'm out here doing. And even the doctor, he was a young guy, super cool. They took me back, ran me through the mill, did the chest x-ray, lungs, did all that stuff. My lungs came back clear, so they weren't full of stuff. So I guess all of the crud was like upper respiratory, right? And the dude gave me an inhaler. He gave me some oral steroids. And he gave me some antibiotics too, because he said sometimes if you have pneumonia in your lungs, if it's early stages, they won't be able to see it on the x-ray when they read it there in the office. And he was like, I'm going to give you these antibiotics just to make sure if you have some pneumonia setting in, it's going to knock it out. And told me that he thought as long as I got this medication and started taking it and utilized that inhaler, that I would actually be fine to continue on. And so that was another shocker to me. I was like, whoa, okay. Well, like I said, I had already been made peace with myself that it was over. So, man, I mean, so now talk about a roller coaster, like total now mind shift back to, oh, okay, well,
We're still in this.
no, I'm still going to keep going.
Yeah.
And walked down to the grocery store, filled those prescriptions. I took that inhaler and took those steroids, and they almost immediately started giving me relief in terms of my breathing. And I didn't realize the crap acted that fast. So we just had a nice evening in Breckenridge.
Yeah, man. We went out, had a steak,
Yeah.
hung out, able to resupply and get back on the trail the next day. It was encouraging. I mean, to me, because I was like you, I was thinking, okay, well, I'm headed out of here by myself. I was going to keep going, especially if I knew you were all right. But I was gonna keep going, and I was really glad that I didn't have to roll out of there by myself because it would have just been a totally different experience.
Yeah.
Doing that by yourself, especially not, I mean, we just not leaving with the group start, with the exception of the time that we had with, being with Lando, there just weren't that many people out there. Like you could have had a wreck and you could have been sitting a long time in some of those places. And you know me, I'm prone to have those wrecks.
Yeah.
So I was just like, well, I'll keep going, but
there were many days that we didn't see anybody.
Yep.
I mean, and even the days that you did see people, it was maybe just like 2 or 3 through hikers.
Yep.
Yeah, man. Get up the next morning, ride those 6 miles back out of town to pick the trail up. We got a really early start that morning. I remember it was real cold.
Yep.
It was real cold headed out of Breckenridge.
Yeah, because we were up and we were out of town and on the trail before sunrise.
Yeah.
Because remember, we passed, I don't remember her name. You remember her name?
Oh, if you wouldn't have asked me, I could have told you.
Anyways, one of the TNGA legends around here was attempting the Colorado Trail, and we passed her as we were headed out of Breckenridge.
And she started with group start.
She did, yeah.
She started with group start. So we had caught up to her.
Yep.
So we had gained 24 hours on her. And yeah, immediately once we got back onto the trail, we immediately were pushing the bikes again.
Yep.
It was just a gnarly, rocky, not super steep, but just nasty, rocky trail. And it had rained.
Yep.
I remember it had rained. Everything was soaking wet.
It was like a thick mud.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gosh almighty, I cannot believe I forgot her name, man. I can't remember it. But,
I don't remember.
But yeah, well, this kind of leads me to my point that for anybody who's familiar with bikepacking races, this kind of leads me to my point that the Colorado Trail is not TNGA.
Yep.
Because here's this lady who is a multiple-time TNGA finisher, strong bikepacker, very well known in the sport, and she's crushed.
Yep.
Like, when we saw her, you could tell she was done.
Yep. She was still moving, but she was done.
Yeah, you could tell, like, there was no way, man. Yep. And the one thing she said was, I just didn't think I was going to have to push my bike this much.
Yep.
Well, she was saying that at that point, she had no idea what was ahead of her, man.
Yep. Yeah.
Like, if anybody was saying that at that point, there's no way, man.
Yep.
Because at that point, I was still okay with having to push my bike.
Because we'd only had to push for, some sections. Like, well, here's a 5-mile stretch that's steep.
Yeah.
And we got to push for most of that. And then we'd have 10 or 12 rideable miles. And then we'd have another, and it was not this long sustained. I don't think up to that point we had any long sustained sections where we were just pushing for hour after hour after hour.
Yep. And so out of Breckenridge now, we're trying to make it into Copper Mountain.
That's right. Yep.
Yep.
And it was coming down out of we kind of came out of Breckenridge, climbed, and then dropped down into Copper. And it was that drop down into Copper where I think that's the first time, I can't remember if it was coming into Breckenridge or Copper where my brakes went out. And it was some steep, maybe it was coming into Breckenridge, I don't remember, but it was steep, just long, sustained downhill. And, I'm a big guy, plus you got an extra 30, 40 pounds on your bike.
Yeah, with water, 40 pounds easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And man, my brakes just weren't up to the test. So my brakes my pads and rotor would get hot, and I would just lose all braking capabilities. And that first time it happened, I thought I was going to die. It scared the crap out of me because I'm just busting down there's these switchbacks, and literally I go to squeeze and there's just nothing there. I had to put it right into the side of the mountain.
Well, and it was no easy feat getting to Copper Mountain. Like, I'm looking here on the cue sheet. That's when we had to go over the 10-mile range.
10-mile range. Yep. So it must have been coming down the back end of the 10-mile range.
Yep.
Then.
I think that's where it would have been. Yeah. And the 10-mile range gets us up to 12,500 feet.
And Breckenridge is at what, 8 something?
Well, it doesn't show on the cue sheet,
Okay.
but
that's right.
I'd say probably around 8 or 9.
Yeah. So there's 3,000-4,000 feet worth of gain coming out of Breck.
Yeah, and you're up there high for a long, long time. And come down into Copper Mountain. It's again it's not even a town.
No, it's a ski resort. That's really what Copper is.
Yeah,
it was 1 or 2 little restaurants open. We got a burger for lunch, kind of and then headed right back out.
Yeah, because we got into Copper since we got such an early start.
Yeah.
Even though it was a long ways to get there and a lot of hard terrain, we still got in there pretty early, right around lunchtime probably.
Yeah.
And then coming out of Copper Mountain, did we go that day? We went on up and over Kokomo Pass, didn't we?
Yeah. Yeah, because remember, that's that stretch coming out of Copper where once you get past the ski lifts and stuff, it's this beautiful green valley that just laid out in front of you, a river flowing down it, and we're just working our way up, and all the way up ultimately to Kokomo Pass.
And that's where we saw there's that cabin up there.
Yep.
And is that where we saw the photographer too?
No, that was... I think we saw him on our way up. I saw the picture, not the picture he took, but I took a picture right where we saw him. I may have been heading up the 10-mile range coming out of Breckenridge that we saw him.
Maybe so, yeah. That was all pretty country up there, though, man.
Really
Kokomo
pretty.
Pass was a legit high country pass.
Yeah,
I remember how beautiful it was, full of marmots and but again, as you'll see, the theme, a lot of pushing through there.
A lot of pushing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And where did we end up camping that night?
We came out of, we made it to Leadville that night.
Dang, did we really?
Yeah. Remember, we got into Leadville late, didn't we? Does that make sense on the cue sheet there? We got into Leadville late.
Yep.
Remember, we had that road ride up into Leadville, and then we stayed at the Columbine something Inn.
Yep.
That little just nothing hotel, and there was nothing to eat in town. Nothing was open. Everything was closed up.
It sure was, because we went up to our room and cooked dehydrated meals.
Yep.
Dang, that was a long day,
That was a long day. We covered, especially like we left Breck, had lunch in Copper, and finished the day in Leadville. That was a good long push.
Yeah, because now I remember popping out on that paved road.
Yep.
late at night, and I remember we had to stop a couple times and add layers.
Yep.
Because
cold.
it was getting cold.
Yep.
And yeah, we pushed on into Leadville, and yep, that's right. Because we woke up the next morning, and it was the day before they were going to run the Leadville 100.
Yep.
So we rode our bikes down to a little coffee shop, bakery, and got us some food and sat out in front of the coffee shop trying to have a peaceful breakfast. And, dude, we just got bombarded.
There was no peace with celebrity Chad Rite in the house.
Holy crow, man. We just got bombarded with, which was cool.
It was kind of fun, especially after being, just hammering for, what was that, day 4 maybe, 3 or 4. And we'd just been hammering, and you were finally starting to feel a little bit better. Had some, a day or two of medicine.
I would say that was a big turning point for me. Yeah.
And we had to hang out because I was going to the bike shop to get my brakes worked on. And so we had kind of a leisurely morning because the bike shop didn't open until 10. Remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we just went to that coffee shop and hung out there. And yeah, because the race was going on, and that was like our people were there.
I would say everybody was really cool except the dude who was peddling the little
CBD.
The little CBD strips.
Strips, yeah.
That dude was just flat out annoying.
Oh man, he just would not go away.
He would not. He can't. He would go away,
and he'd come back,
and then he would come back,
and then he pulled out his camera. He wanted you to do video promotions for his CBD.
Holy crap, man!
Whatever his CBD strips. That was, yeah. That dude, he wanted to work on my bike. He was like, "Oh, I got some stuff." I'm like, "Bro, you ain't getting near my bike, man. No way." I was letting him work on my bike.
No, I guess that leads me. That it's funny that part of the conversation leads me to one of my main favorite things about this whole race, and it was the people.
Yeah.
Like for me, that was one of my major takeaways from the race was the people that we got to meet along the way. And that's what's amazing, I think, about bike packing is it forces you to utilize the local economy to resupply yourself. So these races are not supported. It's called self-supported, which means you can utilize anything you can get your hands on, but nobody can meet you. There's no aid stations. There's no nothing. And because of that, you have to go into these towns and you have to be there and interact with the people, right? And it forces you to meet tons of strangers and weird people and cool people and, the old homeless guy. And do you remember that dude that came up to me when we were sitting... You remember that dude, man?
Where?
When we were sitting out to eat breakfast, that weird dude.
Yeah.
I forget what he was talking about, man.
I don't
forget what he was talking about.
He was on something. He was living out of another world than you and I were living out.
He really was, man. I just remember that dude.
That dude was out there. Yeah, I remember that. Yep. Yeah, it is really cool. Just the nature of that self-supported race, because the reality is if we were doing this as a typical staged bike race or something, well, like there would be crew there and we'd have all the tools. We could have worked on my brakes real time, or we could have fixed a wheel or like whatever real time, because the nature of it's like it forced us in Leadville. It's like, well, the bike shop doesn't open until 10, so we got to hang out until 10. And then we got to go to the bike shop, and then we got to get in queue. We got to see if they, how quickly they can work on the bike. And it just forces you to interact and problem solve in different ways than you would if it was supported.
Yeah, and you don't get that at all in ultra running.
Yep.
Even something like Cocodona, your world is isolated to the event, right? So you're coming into aid stations that are set up by the race directors and volunteers, and so your whole world is is existing within the bubble of this event. So even though you're going through towns and stuff, you're not doing anything, and you're just trying to get to the aid station, right? And you're only seeing your people, and you're only seeing people who are attached to the event that you're actually doing. And that's cool, I guess, if you want to go super fast, but it's definitely, for me, not as rewarding as having to experience these places and figure out where things are. It's like, from now on, if we go back to Leadville, well, we know where the best place to eat is. We know where the bike shop is. We know where the outdoor store is. It's like, we could go back to any of these little towns that we pass through now, and we pretty much would know where the best of everything's at. Yep. And that's cool experience, man.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a cool experience to have.
It allows you to see and interact with the community and environment in ways that otherwise you just wouldn't. You just blast right through.
Yeah. And on the bike too, like you said, blast right through. If you drive through these towns, you don't experience it the same way. There's something about traveling on the bicycle. I think it's the optimal way to explore, because it's the perfect pace between, okay, yeah, I can cover a lot of ground here. I can go a long ways and experience a lot of different stuff, but it's slow enough that I notice everything. Yep. I notice the dog chained up in front of the old cabin there. I noticed the old farm truck. I noticed, the river that's flowing along the side of this road, the little rock outcrop. Like, I notice all that stuff. Driving, you don't notice any of that, man. It's just the best way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah.
As much as I love running and stuff, it's not comparable to the bike in terms of really creating a awesome adventure.
Yeah.
But the bike shop in Leadville, good. They were good to go, man.
They were
got
awesome.
You right in.
Got me right in. Replaced my disc and
basically told you need a whole new brake system because you're way too heavy for that bike.
Yep.
Yeah. And we still had, I don't know, what mile are we at now? Leadville bypass.
200 and something?
199.
Oh, not even. So, yeah.
Yeah.
200 miles, and we're not even halfway in at this point.
200 miles into a 530-mile race, and you're being told you need a whole new brake system.
Yeah, that they don't have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No.
That couldn't have felt good.
No, that was yeah. But I did leave. They put a bigger rear rotor on that thing, so I did leave in a little better shape than I came in.
Yeah.
It made a little difference. So we headed out of Leadville, I don't know, probably 11 o'clock or something.
Yeah, a little after lunchtime, something like that, yeah.
And next big push was down into Buena Vista, wasn't it?
Yeah, it would have been, because I remember going out of Leadville. We were riding. I actually got to do some riding out of Leadville. It was on a lot of the trails that were used by the actual race route.
Yep.
The Leadville 100.
Yep.
We rode some like fire roads, and then we got on those trails, really beautiful, nice rideable trails.
And that's what I remember we talked about this. That's what this race does. Is you've got these sections like we're like coming into Leadville, like 10 Mile Pass and all these like that just steal your soul, where you're just hour after hour. I think we pushed our bike. I've got a note here that 10-mile range section coming into Leadville, that there was like probably over 20, maybe even 30 miles worth of bike pushing on that section. You remember that? And that just steals your soul. And then you get into Leadville and you get a little reprieve, you get a good meal in, you come out of Leadville and you're lulled back into like, oh, this is okay.
Maybe we can ride.
Maybe we can ride this thing. Yeah. Like we got 20, 30 miles of good rideable terrain.
That last section was just a fluke.
We're right.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get like, okay, we're okay again. And then it steals your soul again.
It
And
did,
it's just a constant. And the further you go, the more sections there are that are just kicking you right in the gut.
Yeah. 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 I don't remember anything really eventful.
I just remember there was a nice long stretch of like slight, almost flat, just slightly downhill, right along that river, dirt road, going into Buena Vista, where we were just cranking.
Oh,
like
yeah.
we were probably, I don't know, 16, 17 miles an hour on our loaded down mountain bikes, just turning. And it was the best just reprieve in terms of riding that led us right into downtown Buena Vista.
Yep.
You remember that section?
Yeah, because we had climbed out of Leadville. We would have climbed back up to over 10,000 feet, and then that long road, it just was a gradual slope all the way down to Buena Vista is only at 7,900 feet.
Yep. So we lost a lot of.
We lost all that elevation just gradually over the course of it was a long stretch, like 15 miles or something.
But we were booking.
Yeah. And we got into Buena Vista again pretty early.
Yeah.
Right about lunchtime.
We had lunch at the Viking Burger in Buena Vista.
That was a cool town.
Yeah, I love that town, man.
I would have liked to.
We were just there a couple of weeks ago.
I would have liked to have spent more time in Buena Vista. And I think we would have stayed in Buena Vista if it wouldn't had been for that detour that we had to make into Breckenridge, because we essentially had a 10-day window.
Yep.
Because of logistics and with my wife, and she had to get back home. So we had a 10-day window. So we went into Buena Vista, ate lunch, went by they had actually a pretty nice outdoor store in Buena Vista.
Yep, we were able to stock up on dehydrated meals and that stuff.
Couple little odds and ends. I think I got a sleeping bag liner.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I didn't have a sleeping bag.
That's right.
I was just sleeping in my puff gear.
Yep, that's
so
right.
I got a sleeping bag liner that I used just to wrap myself up in, because there maybe the night before or something like that, I had been getting a little cold. But we headed out of Buena Vista after lunch, and I remember we're headed up this dang road, and the mountains are all out in front of us, and they were having like a little music festival over there on the left, right there at the river. And it was getting late. By this point, it was getting later in the day. I mean, by the time we ate lunch, did the resupply, all that, it was like evening time. And people are starting to gather at this music festival, and they're sitting over there just relaxing, having an awesome time on this beautiful lawn
I remember
by
that.
a river with a backdrop of mountains. And you were like, dang, man.
That was
Do we really
real easy to just pull over right here.
Do we really want to leave this place?
Yeah.
But I think we were pushing again because we were kind of behind schedule.
Yeah, we're trying to make up some ground.
And we were beginning to realize that we weren't going to cover as much ground as we thought we were going to.
Yeah.
And it was a long road ride out of Buena Vista.
Yep.
It turned into a long, gradual climb. And if you remember right, we were looking on our GPS, and off the left of the road, there was a river.
Yep.
And you could see on the GPS just across the river was the trail that we needed to be on. Well, the way the route went, you went way up the road. I'm talking about like 6 or 7 mile climb up this road. And then it turned back to the left onto the trail. And then you came back down and just paralleled that road and just basically just went back. All those miles you covered, you just went backwards on them.
Yep.
But you were a few hundred yards through the woods on a trail on the other side of the road.
Yep. I remember riding up that road, and there was one of those speed limit signs that like flashes and will tell you how fast you're going. And we're riding up there, and it's flashing 4 4.
I got it on video.
You do?
Yeah, I looked at that, and then I shined down, or I put the camera down on my GPS. We were going exactly 4 miles per hour.
Yeah, going up that hill. And that was a long
Couple hours.
long climb, just spinning.
Yeah.
Yep. And you're right, because it was getting dark right as we were getting off that road. And then we cut back and we double backed and just coasted kind of down. I mean, we just gave up all that distance right back the other direction.
Yeah, and the whole time, like, there were multiple entrances to that trail.
Yeah.
You're just thinking, like,
why
am I, like, I could literally make a left turn right here and just jump on the trail. The trail's right there.
Yep.
And there's a bridge. I could jump on the trail, and that will cut 12 miles off of this, 5 more miles of climbing,
Yep.
And then I was also too hoping that when we turned on that trail, since it was a gradual uphill, when we turned on that trail, I was like, oh, maybe it'll just be nice and smooth flowing, single track down. No, it wasn't that.
Nope.
It's like, how does this work? We just rode all the way up here, and now we're coming back the same way. You would think it would all be downhill because it was uphill the whole way, but it wasn't. It was just little rollers, you know. You'd get a little short downhill, and then you're off the bike pushing up a hill.
Yep.
And those can be more frustrating
than the long.
When you get it in your mind. Okay, we got a 5-mile climb here. Let's just hunker down and get it behind us. The little rollers can be more frustrating than that because you're just on and off, on and off, on and off. It's like dangling a carrot in front of you.
Yeah, those. Yep.
You think you're going to ride, and you do. You ride for 500 yards, and then you're back off the bike.
Yep.
And so is that the night that we found like a little creek crossing, and we found that little campsite kind of just a little off the trail? And it was like it was remember that some thru hiker had left a barrel of their food.
Oh yeah, I think that was that
it night. Was in a barrel or whatever you call it, and it was behind a log right there.
Yep.
Well, we had come into camp so late we didn't know where they were at, but you had found that little spot.
Yep.
And it was it wasn't a campsite.
No, it was just a little.
It was just a little clearing on the side of a creek where probably some backpackers had camped before.
Yep. Yeah, I think that was where we were. I think that was that night.
Yeah, I think it was. Yep. That was not the best camp spot in the world, but
no, but it worked. But because I remember it was well after dark when we got there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was late.
And
it was late for sure.
We bedded down there.
I think the one significant thing I remember from that campsite that night is you and I prayed together that night.
That's right.
I've told this story just a few times before, but it was odd for me because I'm still in the middle of this thing, but I still don't feel 100%, and I'm still not sure I'm going to be able to finish this thing or not. I didn't feel 100% at all through the whole time. But I remember us praying that night, and I remember just saying, Lord, we don't ask you that we finish this thing. All I'm asking you is that if we finish it, that people will see what your sons can do. But if I don't finish it, people will see what your sons can't do. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And whether people, I guess the core of that was I was in a strange way at peace with whatever happened.
Yeah.
It was like, if I'm not able to finish this, well, hopefully people will see how weak I am and can be. And if I do finish this thing, well, then hopefully people will see how strong you can be as a man of God, right? As a child of God. Mm-hmm. So in either outcome, I just want the Lord to be glorified, either in my weakness or in my strength, either way, Yep,
I remember that. I think the thing that is maybe for the listeners, it's so different about this type of adventure versus like a typical ultra or something like that is, you know, in ultra, it's like if you can control your mindset and your body doesn't break, you can finish. You can keep moving forward. On an adventure like this, the reality is there are so many factors outside of your control. You can be in the best mind space in the world. Your body can be strong and you can be healthy, and you bend a wheel and now it won't roll, or you throw a chain and you don't have a replacement, or your derailleur break, and all of a sudden, like if you're not near a bike shop, you're out of the race. Like there's just not a good option for you. Or if you wreck and you take a hard spill, right, and you injure yourself, there's just so many factors. And so to acknowledge that, and I just remember, I think probably we're getting at this point in the race. I'll just speak for myself, but it sounds like you're at a similar place. Like we're getting to this place where we're realizing, okay, we are into this thing now, and it's way harder than I thought it would be. We're moving way slower than I thought we would, and it's not a given that we're going to get this done. There's still a lot. I mean, we're just over 200 miles in. We're not even halfway in. And there's still a lot.
And it just keeps getting higher
higher and harder. And so just that, I just remember that evening, just kind of, you know, probably that evening, and coming out of Buena Vista is that section where, like, that's your last major resupply for almost 200 miles, I think, 180 miles.
We had Princeton Springs we knew about, but that was it.
Little camp store
But
there.
even then, Buena Vista was the last place you were going to find gear and dehydrated meals and that specialty stuff.
Like that.
Yeah, man. I just, you know, our default is always in times of need or even in a lot our little silly physical things that we choose to go and do. Our default is just to always pray for strength and pray for, you know, ask the Lord to make sure everything goes well and you're able to finish this thing and this and that. And, you know, just the more mature I get, I'm like, well, at that point, really all I'm praying for is what I want.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't know if people will take this the wrong way, but that's really, when you're praying for those things, you're just praying for your will to be done. Like, of course that's what you want. Of course you want to be able to finish this thing, but like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't finish it, and you made I'm not saying you quit, but I'm saying you made every effort to do it, like, and that ended up being that can be the Lord's will, and he can actually be glorified through your weakness and your inability to do something like that, maybe more so than he would be glorified in, you know, giving you strength to actually finish it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, one of the things that our pastor said a while back, and I think about it in terms of this, is this idea of surrender being the path to life, right? And so, like, you think about that prayer and that race, like getting to the point where you're willing to surrender the outcome to what God's plan and what his will is for this adventure. And it no longer becomes about, well, we got to finish, or we want to be this, or you know, want people to know we're hard, or, you know, whatever. Like, are you willing to surrender that for something even, you know, that's less, that makes you less, but glorifies God more? And to me, that was kind of the nature of that moment and that prayer of, like, hey, we'll surrender this, Lord.
Yeah.
Our desire is to finish, certainly, but we'll surrender it. Our ask is that you use it either way. And I think there's so many areas in life that are that way, where we're just unwilling to surrender.
Well, I mean, I take the time to stop and discuss that moment for me because it was probably one of the most impactful moments of the race to me because it's the first time in these sorts of endeavors that I was mature enough to do that.
Yeah.
Because never before have I been thinking that way. You know what I mean? And so it's a big deal, man. And that's one of the beautiful things about doing stuff like this is it matures you and it forces you to mature in very practical ways. And that was just a big moment for me that I'll take with me into the rest of my endeavors from now on. I mean, that is the attitude to have, in my opinion, as long as it is paired with your true and honest effort. Right? Like, you have to also be careful with this, talking about this stuff to people listening, because you can also use something like this as a really easy excuse to quit.
Yep.
Right? And that's not what we're talking about here.
Yep, for sure.
So, got up the next morning and we knew we had Princeton Hot Springs. It wasn't far.
Yep. It's good, fast downhill section. I think that may have been where like we got the fastest speed logged for the whole trail. Was remember that downhill road going into Princeton Springs was just fast and steep and paved. Got into Princeton Springs, which is like it's a resort. It's a hot springs resort, and it's like a 4-star nice resort. And got into there and strolled in like smelling like dog poo and days out on the trail because again, right, we rode right through. We didn't spend the night in Buena Vista, so we hadn't showered in several days at this point. And walk into this nice restaurant right about breakfast time and
yeah, they weren't too thrilled about our presence.
No, they didn't seem to be. Yeah, we weren't their target clientele.
Yeah. They served us really good food.
Yeah,
it was an amazing breakfast. I mean, I think this is where I started gorging myself probably for the first time. But yeah, for anybody that's out doing this race, just when you go in there, just know that, hey, you just understand that these people don't understand what it is you're doing, and like, don't be loud and disrespectful, and because they're going to be thrown off by you being there.
Yeah.
Versus all of the other people who are there who are like there for weddings and have never. A lot of them probably never spent a night in the woods in their life. I mean, but good breakfast there. And where do we go after that? Princeton Springs.
So we head out of Princeton Springs.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so this was our last, what we thought was our last resupply until Silverton.
Yep.
And Princeton Springs was at... What mile were we at there? Princeton Hot Springs was at mile 264.
So we're right at we're right at halfway.
Yep, 264, and we thought our only resupply after that was going to be in Silverton at mile 447, and it got pretty scary. Not long after Princeton Springs, because we were moving really, really slow. And we had we thought we had 3 days worth of food and stuff. Maybe we could have stretched it, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you, if I would have had to live off of what I had leaving Princeton, all the way to Silverton, I would not have had enough calories.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I could have made it through, but at some point it would have got really, really slow because I would have been having to ration food like a son of a gun.
Yeah.
And we're just moving so slow. And I remember it begins to sink in to me, into my mind, that, hold on a minute. If this is as fast as we're able to move for the next, what, 150 miles, 180 miles, like, we're not going to make it there in 3 days.
Yep.
Like, this is going to be a 5-day stretch.
Yep. I remember we had a conversation. We're coming out of Princeton Springs. Remember we came out of Princeton Springs and we started climbing, and it was just brutal. It was just, I've got video of it on my phone, but it was just that steep, chunky rock, dirt that is just,
oh yeah.
Remember that, just up and over. It took, I mean, it was so slow going.
So is that where you bonked?
No, I had bonked before that.
Okay.
But that's where we started, and then it started hailing. And remember that spot where the hail was thick on the trail?
Hold on, that was Sergeant's Mesa. You're too far ahead.
I'm too far ahead then.
Because it was climbing.
Maybe that is where I bonked.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
I thought I bonked on like day 2 or 3.
It might have been. It was in the night.
Yeah.
It was in the night.
Yeah.
But the next place that we camped at that day, left Princeton Springs, we camped up in that shelter.
That shelter.
So we make our way up to.
That's right.
So from mile 264 at mile 298, we're way up on a ridge.
Yeah.
Completely exposed, and the weather starts getting iffy.
Yep.
It starts sprinkling and this and that. It gets dark.
Yep.
And we run up on a very primitive shelter.
That's right.
Up there at 11,500 feet.
Yeah.
Now, we hadn't seen Lando all day.
Yeah.
Remember, we had thought we had gotten ahead of him.
Right, because we had breakfast together, and then he left out of the store before us, but then we never saw him. And usually we would catch back up to him, especially on those uphills, and we never saw him. And then looking on the tracker, it looked like he was, like maybe he'd missed the turn coming out of Princeton or something, and he was back behind us. And, I mean, we had a long day because it was deep in the night when we finally got to that shelter.
Yeah.
And we had there was no other camping option around because it was all exposed.
Yeah, and that was a dry camp too.
Yep, it was.
No, we were way up on that ridge. There was no water anywhere.
No water up there. Yeah, because I remember one of the thru hikers that was there had his Nalgene positioned under at the runoff section of roof for that shelter, hoping it would rain and he'd be able to collect a little bit of water or something because he was dry.
Yeah, and when we rode up on this shelter, me and James, it's dark, kind of foggy, spitting rain. You know, even with your headlamp, you can't see but just a few feet in front of you. And I remember hearing somebody saying, hey, and we're like, what the crap?
Just out of the darkness.
Yeah, out of the darkness.
Like, hey, Chad.
Yeah.
James, is that you? What in the world?
And I'll be dang, it was old Lando.
He had to do it somehow.
He had got up there before us and made the same decision we were about to make, and he had already had his tent and everything set up. He had crawled in his tent, nice and cozy, and there he was. And me and James hunkered down under the shelter. Now, this shelter is just literally basically a lean-to with walls.
Yeah.
No, it's not enclosed. It's just kind of like a carport or something.
Yeah, no floor. I mean, just dirt floor.
Yeah.
It's just a very basic structure, just enough to protect you from the rain and block the wind a little bit.
Yeah. We hunkered down under there, and it was cold that night because we were so high.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember, and I didn't like staying up there that high all night because I was still having trouble breathing and stuff.
Yep.
And, it was better for me if we could come down to lower elevations, at least to sleep. But, that's kind of we kind of had to stop there because of the weather and because how late it was getting. Visibility was poor, trail was super narrow and nasty, and just couldn't ride through that stuff. And got up.
I remember that was a tough day.
Yeah.
I remember that. Is that the day too when we had no, it wasn't that day. Thinking about all those bike racers.
No, it wasn't that day.
Yeah, okay.
Nope. We leave out of that cabin or shelter, I guess. Go through Marshall Pass, and then we begin our time on Sergeant's Mesa.
That's right.
All right. That's where the freaking storm hit.
That's where it hit. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We're
the beginning of the day was pretty nice.
It was. Yep. Yeah, because we came down out of those mountains, and we even had some. Didn't we even have some like dirt road? A few miles of dirt road that were pretty quick down at the bottom of that hill.
Yeah, I think we did, and then we started up through like this cow pasture.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yep.
And we meet this young guy who's through hiking. Remember?
Yep.
And he said he had been out there for some astronomical amount of time.
Yeah. Yep.
This kid was like 17 18 years old or something.
Guy.
Yeah, and then we also, I remember we were thinking about water too, because there hadn't been much water all day. And I think it was that through hiker that mentioned to us, like, hey, there's not any water for the next long stretch here. And I remember he was talking about he was going to fill all his mess up and try to make it through. So we stopped and filtered water right there in that cow pasture.
Yep.
From a little seep.
Yep, I remember that. Yep.
And as soon as we kind of push off of that water source and begin climbing up through that cow pasture, that's when the storm started rolling in.
That's right.
And that lightning started hitting. And there were multiple times that we considered stopping.
Yep.
Like the lightning was getting so bad that I remember thinking, well, you know, once we get off of this knob right here, once we get off of this piece of high ground,
we'll bunker down.
We're going to pull off under one of these trees or something and just sit and wait this thing out.
Yeah.
But we never did, because the lightning and thunder started to slack up just a hair. It was still rolling, but it looked like it was going to slack up. But as soon as it started slacking up, that's when the rain and the hail started.
Yeah. Yeah, I just remember us being up there and that hail coming down, and it's just pinging off the top of your helmet.
Yeah.
Just ting, 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 ting. And it's just, for whatever reason, I guess it was just the headspace I was in, but it was driving me nuts just to have that constant ting, 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 hail pelting off my helmet.
Well, yeah, and I remember at times too, nobody believes me when I tell them this, but I remember walking through some of them sections of trail, and that hail was like ankle deep.
It was. It absolutely was.
I mean, this rainstorm lasted for 6 hours,
it was
maybe
a long time.
4 to 6 hours, because there was across Sergeant's Mesa there was zero riding.
Yep, it was all, and that's when I remember, Chad, we stopped and we had the conversation about, like, legitimately, we ain't gonna have enough food.
Yeah,
we're not moving fast enough to get there. And we started going to the cue sheet and looking and trying to figure out what we're going to do. And I remember that's when we first thought, okay, well, we're going to have to go to this place that's on here that's called Cathedral Cabin or whatever.
But nobody had noticed it.
It's not listed as anything significant. And I just remember I said something like, well, you know, we're not we're just moving too slow. And you looked at me, you said, well, we got to get to this place. I just remember like that being like, all right, this is the target. We got to,
Yep.
we don't know what's going to happen beyond that point, but we at least got to get to Cathedral.
Well, and I think that changed everything too, because prior to us noticing Cathedral Ranch cabins, our target was Silverton.
Yeah.
And the problem that was creating was, one, we realized we didn't have enough supplies to make it there, and two, we had picked a target that was way too far out, like way too far away. And that was becoming a problem. And so once this Cathedral Mountain cabins came onto our radar, it then gave us something to shoot for that we felt was within striking distance, which totally, I think, is just allows you to like bring yourself back into a good headspace, right? Because that's one of the biggest things that I try to tell people is you have to break these challenges down into small, digestible segments. And I think we had made a mistake by looking too far out and saying Silverton's our next goal. I understand why we did that, because we thought that was how we missed this Cathedral Mountain cabins. I don't know, but it wasn't on any of our radar until we started basically panicking about the fact we were going to be out of food soon.
Yeah.
And I don't remember where coming off of Sergeant's Mesa.
You remember? Wasn't that where the bus was? And the trail magic?
Dang sure was.
Yep, it sure was.
Yep.
So we're coming down off of Sergeant's Mesa, and we've had a long, hard, just really, I mean, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. Morale was low with me.
It was 100% push.
Oh, it was just
and you
brutal.
remember how steep those climbs were?
Steep climbs. It rained, like you said, probably 6 hours. Rain, hail, sleet, we saw everything that day except snow, and it was just brutal. And we come down out of Sergeant's Mesa, and we come down this little crossing, and there's this fella sitting there. He's got the back of his truck open. He's a hiker or something. He's got a cooler, and I think I was maybe the first one down. Then I think Lando came down after me, or maybe you. And he says, "Hey, you guys want a beer?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll take a beer."
Yeah.
and I stroll over there, and he's like, "Hey, there's we're in the middle of nowhere. It's like this little gravel forest road out in the middle of nowhere." And he's like, "There's a fella in a bus right around the corner over there cooking up burgers and pizza and doing trail magic." And I just remember thinking, there ain't no way there's a guy in a bus.
It's like a dream world.
Like, it was. It's like, what? That can't exist out here. And sure enough, man, we all ride around that corner, and I don't remember, you probably remember the guy's name, but there's something Joyride Trail Magic set up that was fantastic.
Oh, we needed it so bad.
Yeah. That was just one of the, again, right? Like, this is what this trail does. It sucked every bit of life out of us. And then you drop down and you're like, oh, there's trail magic here. And this guy's cooking burgers, and he's got cold drinks and water resupply. Like, it's just fire already made. We just go, we're wet, our shoes, everything's soaking wet.
Yeah.
Curl up around the fire, somebody cooking us dinner. It's like, this is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Total morale.
Yeah, it was literally like living in a dream world coming up on that out there, man. That was the wildest crap.
The most unexpected thing. Like, this guy had a bus that he had retrofitted into this trail magic machine that had a little kitchen in it and sleeping quarters, and just some old hippie trail guy that's just spent his whole life doing these incredible adventures, has amazing stories to tell. And he was set up there, and he was just going to serve food and take care of hikers and bikers until he ran out of food. That was pretty cool.
That was awesome, man. Yeah, I'm just remembering that, just sitting sitting around that fire. I melted one of my socks on that fire. You remember that
Yeah.
sock that I was wearing that had the toe was gone?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's where I did that. I melted my sock in that fire. I mean,
Your feet were so cold and wet, you probably didn't even realize.
Cold, dude.
It was cold.
After being in the rain all day, and like you said, but yeah, man, I don't remember that dude's name, but yeah, he was doing a really cool thing, and he just said he was out there doing that. He did that. He said he does that once a year.
Yeah.
And like James said, he had done all kinds of bike packing adventures and through hikes, and he said, there'd been so many times when he's been out on the trail, and if you haven't done long stuff on trails before, trail magic is most of the time it's just where some local will pull up to a trailhead, and he'll walk a couple hundred yards down the trail, and he'll hang a grocery bag of Cliff Bars or something like that on a tree limb, or maybe sometimes they'll just set a cooler out on the side of the trail somewhere near an access point, and it'll be full of Coca-Colas or Red Bulls or whatever. And that guy said, there have been so many times on my adventures where I came across this trail magic, and when you come across this stuff, it really is meaningful to you. Like I remember you grabbing a cold Coca-Cola out of a cooler somewhere.
Yep.
And any other time in your life, you would not take random food or drink from some source that you have no idea where it comes from. But when you're out there, it doesn't matter. You take it and you eat it and you drink it. And it's a morale booster. It really is. And that guy was saying, like, this has happened to me so many times, and I never got to thank these people that took the time out of their day to provide this. And he was like, this is just my way of thanking them and giving back. And I just thought it was an amazing thing he was doing, man.
It was. It was great. I think that's such a great point, right? Like, if you were walking through a city or driving down the road, and there was a old nasty beat up cooler sitting on the side of the road or sitting on the sidewalk in a town, like, you would never go walk up, open that thing. Oh, there's a Coke in there. Let me just. Yeah. You would never do that, right? Oh, there's a candy bar in here. Let me eat this candy bar. But out there, it's like, oh yeah, wow, awesome. Yeah. And he's cooking up burgers. Like, is it grass fed beef? Nobody cares. It's like it's a hot meal. He's serving us burgers.
I'm going to eat it.
I'm going to eat that. He gets up in the morning. He pulls out breakfast burritos for us in the morning before we take off. And I mean, it was awesome. It was so great.
Yeah, it was, man. We just hunkered down under some trees in the wood line over there that night. Not the best camp spot, but it would have been a lot worse if that dude wouldn't have been there.
And again, this was right in the middle of that section where we were concerned. We didn't yet know what Cathedral Rock Cabins would have in store for us. So just the fact that, okay, well, there's a dinner
that we didn't have to pull off our supplies to feed ourselves,
and a breakfast that we don't have to pull off our supplies to feed ourselves was a big, big deal, because we were still early into that 180-mile push, and we're not covering ground quick.
Yep. And so from here, we don't have far from where we meet this guy with trail magic. We have not even a half a day probably to get to that intersection where Cathedral Mountain Cabins, you come down off a hill, you pick up this gravel fire road. I remember there were cows standing out in the road, and you come down off the mountain and you come to a T intersection, and the course goes to the right. But if you want to go to the Cathedral Mountain Cabins, you take a left, and it's 1 mile down there. And for some reason, I remember when we got to that intersection, I thought I remembered you and Landon like talking about, should we go over here or not? And I'm like, I don't care what the crap y'all do. I'm going to Cathedral Mountain Cabins. Like, am I remembering that right?
Yeah, you're remembering it right. Because I think by that, I think that we had food because we didn't have to use our meals the night before.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh, I think I can make it now. And I'm also like, I didn't say anything about this at the time, but that was that day for whatever reason. And it doesn't make logical sense because it wasn't a hard day of riding up until that point. But for whatever reason, that was a low point for me. And I just remember thinking, I don't know if I want to go get lulled into this place. I don't know if I trust myself to get back on my bike.
Yeah.
When we get up to Cathedral Rock, because I knew their cabins and I knew I was not in a good headspace. So there was a part of me that's thinking, I'm probably going to be, what I probably need to do is just keep on pedaling. Because if I go get too comfortable here, I don't know if I trust myself. Because that day, you know, you talk a lot about like when it stops being fun. That day for me was the day when it's like, okay, I don't want to be out here anymore. I'm done with this thing. I don't want to be out here anymore. It wasn't fun anymore.
Well, you did a good job masking it.
Well, good.
Because I didn't know you were in that rough of a spot.
Well, and you know, I was trying not to give it any headspace. But I just knew where I was. But the reality was it would have been silly not to go that mile there and be able to resupply. Because, I mean, we didn't know what they would have, but we knew they'd have something. And so you came down and you're like, well, I'm going.
Yeah.
It ain't even a conversation.
I wasn't even going to stop and talk about
it. You did. You just made it, and we're like, well, all right, I guess we're going to the cabins.
And, man, what a blessing that turned out to be, man.
Well, because storm came in.
Well, so that's what made it such a blessing is we get to this place and it's just a husband and wife. It's their private property.
Yep.
They've got a little ranch that has been in their family for years and years and years. And they decided to build a little store that has really a lot of stuff, like really good stuff.
I mean, it was better outfitted for what we needed than most of the outfitters we visited along the way.
For real, man.
Like they had everything. Bike repair, dehydrated meals,
the
canned
best
meat,
snacks.
like snacks, whatever you would want.
Yep.
It was unbelievable to me. It was like perfectly stocked.
Yep. So you pull up here, the lady comes out and you're like, do you live here? Or like, is this
a commune?
Yeah,
what exactly is going on here?
She's like, yeah, we live here. Like, this is our store. And it's like, well, thank goodness you were home because we really need to buy some stuff from you. And now I will tell you, if you're going to buy stuff from Cathedral Mountain Cabins, you better get your pocketbook out.
It ain't a charity.
They know. They have figured out that if you are pulling up in there, you are hurting, son.
That's right.
And beside the shop, they have a little biker lounge for not for like motorcycle riders, but for mountain bikers or hikers. But hikers don't come through here because this is part of a wilderness bypass.
So it's really targeted just for bike packers.
Yep. And they have a lounge. It has a bathroom, a shower, a couch, microwave, washer, little oven, washer, dryer. And she's like, yeah, you guys can just hang out in the lounge. And then they also have cabins if you wanted to stay the night, that you could rent a cabin and stay the night. But, man, we weren't there. I bet we weren't there more than 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And this cloud starts to build, and we start hearing thunder, and it starts raining. And, like, we are completely jaded by the weather. Like, at this point, we are scared of the weather. Because of the day before on Sargent's Mesa.
Yeah, we had just been beat down by it.
Yeah, like legitimately we were scared of the weather. Yep. And when we saw that storm coming in and then you guys checked it on the radar and saw what it was a legit freaking storm. We were like, yeah, we're going to be here for a while. Yeah. We are not leaving here until the storm rolls through.
Yeah.
And
it was during that. I mean, how long do you think we were there? A couple hours?
Yeah, easy.
Yeah. It was during that couple hours where I saw you pull off one of the most incredible human feats that I've ever seen in my life. You had to have consumed 10,000 calories in that 2 hours.
Yeah.
What did you eat? 2 large pizzas.
2 large supreme pizzas.
A burrito
A
or
whole
something.
burrito.
Something else too.
Some other snacks.
Mac and cheese. I had 1 large pizza, and I can eat. And at this point in the race, like I can really eat. I had 1 large pizza and maybe like a Snickers bar or something. And I was like, I'm done. You had at least 3 times what I ate.
Yeah, it was
unbelievable.
Nobody could believe it.
It was unbelievable.
Even Big Al couldn't believe it. we didn't even talk about Big Al.
We met Big Al earlier that day.
Yeah, we met Big Al earlier
Yep.
that day. Yeah.
Yep.
Standing on the side of a road, filtering water out of a ditch with a daggone 70-liter back rucksack on his back.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and so we're hunkered down in this biker's lounge. Yes, I'm eating all these pizzas and stuff. You guys get a little nap in.
Yep.
And so on that, something happened to me on that race in terms of like, I developed some sort of like food anxiety on this race. So I've heard people who grew up really poor, or like people who have lived in third world countries. I've heard them talk about this food anxiety.
Yep.
Like being hungry and not knowing where they're going to get their next meal from. So when they do have food, they just eat as much as they possibly can.
Yeah. I think the Native Americans used to do that.
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
The Native Americans, if they would,
Because they'd go days sometimes without. So if there was food in front of them, they would just eat until they would literally make themselves sick.
if they killed a deer or something like that, they're going to gorge themselves on that meat. And dude, I'm not joking to you. That happened to me in that race for some weird reason.
You don't have to convince me. You went straight up native on that stuff. I mean, it was.
You know, that lasted even for weeks after I got back home. Like even after I got back home, I found myself just eating copious amounts of food and constantly thinking about where's my next meal? Like, what do I have snacks with me? Like, so it's a subconscious thing.
Yeah.
It's really weird, man.
I didn't have it to the degree that you did, but coming back, like Jennifer would tell you, she would be like, dude, what is wrong with you? Because when we got done, I was ornery for like a week and I just wanted to eat all the time. I could never get full. And I was the same way. I would just shove food in my pockets if I was going to a meeting or something. So I'd have something to eat on the road and just, yeah, man.
It's wild, man.
It's wild what your body does. But you think about, like, we were, granted we always had food, but we were just operating at a calorie deficit for day after day after day. There's just no way we could consume what we were burning, especially those long days pushing and pedaling and pushing those bikes, high elevation. And it's like your body knows. And it's a natural instinct.
Yeah. I think that we have probably all kinds of natural instincts that are dormant in us because we don't tap into them anymore. And I think that's one of them.
Yeah.
Like that food anxiety, I could see how that could be a very useful survival tool for somebody who's living in a primitive culture, to constantly be thinking about where they're going to get their next meal from, because then that's driving them to that thing, and that's what's allowing them to survive. And so I think that my brain somehow, over the course of those days, that natural instinct started to turn on. Yeah. And it's taken it a while to turn back off. Yeah. Which I think that's really cool, But yeah, I think I spent, like, speaking of food anxiety, I mean, after all that stuff I ate, I think I still spent like $170 on snacks at Cathedral Mountain.
Not including
Not including.
I'll bet you dropped nearly $3 at that place.
Dude, I mean, snacks are high there. But I spent $170 on snacks, and I'm going to guarantee you, every bag on my bike was like busting at the seams.
It was.
With food.
Yeah. that was probably your heaviest point of the race. That or coming out of Silverton, you literally had like pastries hanging out of your bags heading out of Silverton.
Yeah, I did.
Or a pie or something.
Yeah, there was stuff. I bought. Well, we'll get there.
We'll get there. Yeah, we're getting there. But that Cathedral Rock Cabins was, like I said, that was a low point for me coming in, and being able to wait out that storm there and have some good food, resupply. Heading out of there, I felt like a new man. Like I just was in a totally different headspace. And it's just, it's that, I mean, you've talked about it a lot. We experience it when we do these things, but you have these ebb and flows of highs and lows. And going in there was probably the low for me for the whole adventure.
Interesting, man.
I thought, in my mind, I thought you knew that. And, like I thought you were kind of like watching me, like what's James gonna do? Is he gonna just want to sit here and spend the night and languish?
Oh, I didn't know that. No,
well, good. I hit it well.
Yeah, you really did, because I totally assumed the whole time, like as soon as this storm passes, we're getting back on the bikes and riding.
Yeah.
Not saying it wasn't difficult to leave, because it was an awesome place, but we did. At afternoon, we got back on the bikes and we took off out of there.
With Big Al?
Yep, we had Big Al with us.
And that's really where you spent some good bike time with Big Al heading out of there.
Yeah, because we had some fire road. We ran into a fan.
In the middle of nowhere. I guess they must have been spot tracking us.
They may have been, yeah.
But yeah, this Jeep comes rolling up. Chad!
Yep, ran into a fan out there.
That's crazy.
Did a picture with him. And this is where... Oh, man.
This is the high point.
The highlight of my whole trip, dude.
That's as excited as I had seen you since we since we loaded up and pulled out of Atlanta or Rome. You were the happiest I had seen you in 2 weeks nearly that evening.
Dude, that will probably go down as one of the most excited moments of my entire life.
You were ecstatic.
I mean, I can't think of anything that in terms of while I'm out doing one of these adventures, I can't think of anything that compared to it, like in terms of the excitement, because we're rolling on, man, out of Cathedral Ranch Cabins. And again, now our next point now legitimately is Silverton. Yep. So Cathedral Ranch is at 380. Silverton again is at 447. So it's still a good pool. But we're rolling out of there, man, in the afternoon, and we ride all day long, all through the evening.
All through the evening, thick mud. I think it rained on us a little more. Nothing terrible.
Yeah, it did rain a little bit.
We were wet.
Yep, and that was a lot of those sections too were those long stretches of like county gravel county maintained road. Mm-hmm. So we were able to put down like 30 miles or something, 20 or 30 miles in that evening.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Yep.
First time we had been on the bikes in a long time.
A couple of days, it felt like.
Yep. And we ended up popping out on this paved road. And our plan is actually to go up to Spring Creek Pass.
That's right.
That was our plan. But now we're up over 10,000 feet on this dang road. It's getting dark, and it's cold, man. Like bombing down those descents on that paved road. Once we climbed, we had a few long descents. We were hitting like 30 or 40 miles per hour on the bike. Yeah. But it just is getting bone chilling cold. And we're thinking we're going to make it up here to Spring Creek Pass, which is nothing but a trailhead, but there is a pit toilet there. Yep. And it's cold enough that I'm thinking in my head, I'm going to get in the pit toilet.
I remember you saying that. You're like, I'm going to sleep. I'm going to gonna spoon that commode
Yep.
and sleep in that pit toilet.
I was legitimately planning on getting, because it would provide some warmth.
Yeah, some
In
protection.
terms of keeping you out of the wind, but it was cold enough to want to seek any sort of shelter you could get.
Yeah.
So that was my plan. But we're like maybe a mile from there, and we're pedaling. Now we're back climbing again.
Yeah.
We're pedaling up this paved road in the middle of nowhere. Not like we're in a town here. And there's just this sign on the side of the road that says Oleo Ranch Cabins or something like that. Oleo Cabins or something. And I don't even know why we stopped.
I don't know that we did. I think we were just riding together, and we're going uphill, so we weren't going fast. And we came by it, and I think I was just past it, and I heard you shout out. You said, "Hey, James, why don't we call, see if we can get us a cabin?" Am I remembering that right?
Yeah.
And
I'm like, call this place, man. I didn't have any cell phone service.
And so I'm like, seriously? I'm like, all right. And so we did. We called.
It seemed like a joke.
It did. It seemed like, well, there's no way. Like, either A, they're not going to answer, or they're not going to have space, or they're not going to. We just thought it's kind of it felt like a long shot.
And it looked like a private, like you couldn't see the cabins from the road. That's like, this is like some high-end
reserve
private
of some sort or something. Yeah. Fish. We passed several of those that are like trout fishing reserves for like groups or high-end clientele or something like that.
But I literally thought, well, this is a joke, but you got cell phone service and you had like one bar.
Yeah, I could.
And I remember you kept trying.
Yep.
And the call wouldn't go through because you barely had any service, but then finally it went through.
Yep. And lady picked up the phone, and I said, "Hey, this is, explain to her what we were doing." I was like, "We are at the road by your gate. We've been riding in the rain. Is there any chance you've got a cabin that we could rent and sleep in tonight?" And she says, "Oh, you just want a hot shower and get out of the weather." I was like, "Yes, ma'am. That's what we're looking for." And she said, "Well, let me check."
Yeah, she didn't immediately say like, "Oh, yeah, we have a cabin available." Like,
no, she's like, "Let me check." And she comes back a minute later.
I'm holding my breath.
I know, we all are. We're like, "Oh, come on, please." She comes back, a minute later, and she's like, "Well, I think we got something for you. Just come on down and, go to the first cabin on the right and ask for Susie Lou or somebody. I don't know, whoever caretaker is, and she'll get you taken care of." And we were like, awesome. All right.
Yeah. But we still didn't know how awesome it was going to be.
No, we had no idea if this was going to be a little shanty in the woods or we're going to be
But anything we knew was going to be better than the pit toilet. Like, we didn't even ask price.
Care.
Like, we did not care. Like,
she could have said it's going to be $700 a person to sleep on this floor right here, and we just said, "Roger that."
I really think I would have took it. No kidding. I really think I would have took it.
Yep.
Yeah. And so we ride down there. The caretaker, we meet with her. She's like, "Well, I got to go up here and sweep the cabin out." And this, we're like, "No, like, we don't need you. Just
open it up."
Yeah. She's like, "Well, the door's unlocked." So she follows us up there. But yeah, we're like, "No, we're good." We walk into this cabin, man, and it is just magnificent.
It's
like,
so cool.
If you ever want a cool experience, go stay in one of these cabins at Oleo Ranch.
Yeah, we should find the link and put it in the show notes here, just because it would be great to be able to drive them some business.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll find the link to their website. But this cabin was completely off grid, and it was like really well made, tight, like snug. Zero electricity.
Yeah.
Everything in there was gas. All the lanterns were gas. Like, the refrigerator everything was gas. There was no electricity. Like, there was not a wall outlet for you to plug anything into.
Nope. Couldn't charge your cell phone in the wall outlet. Nothing.
And dude, like, I just remember going in there and firing up that dang propane wall heater and just standing beside that thing for like an hour.
Yeah. I mean, you looked like you had just strolled into like this is the closest thing to heaven
Yep.
that you're going to find on this planet. And it was so perfect, that cabin. Like, to your point, like, there was no light switches. It had these little lanterns hanging on the wall. You'd literally have to go with a lighter and didn't you have to light them and turn the gas on, and gas wall heater. And it was awesome. Hot shower. I had a gas water heater. We got hot showers in there. Could just decompress for a couple hours. Be comfortable.
Yeah, and we didn't get in there until dark.
Yeah.
So we didn't have a lot of time. But what time we did have, it was just, we got that place so hot. Like, you wanted to start a fire.
I wanted to build a fire.
In the wood burning stove, but I didn't want smoke.
Yeah.
Because I was being so conscious of my lungs and my breathing. So, but that daggone propane wall heater, it got that place like a sauna in there within an hour. It was so snug in there. I remember laying in bed that night and being like, holy crap, I can't even get under the covers. We got it so hot in here.
Yeah, I got up and turned that thing down at one point because it was just hot.
Yeah. So that leads me to my second big takeaway from the race was this race particular made me, at least for a period of time, be so thankful for just the little simple things in life. Like, because I'll be straight up honest with you. If you ever go to stay in oleo cabins, you're going to think it's cool. But, like, if you pull up there in your car and you get out and you get to spend the night in that cabin, you are not going to get the same experience that we're talking about here. When you're just so beat down, you're behind on calories, you're so tired, and you got so much further left to go, and you're thinking you're going to have to literally sleep in a pit toilet in sub-freezing temperatures without a sleeping bag, and then you get to sleep in a bed and take a shower. Like, it's just next level, man. Yeah. And that's one of my biggest takeaways from the event is just how much I was able to appreciate and get excited about just having a bed to sleep in.
Yep.
Like, because I take that for granted every single night. I lay down in my bed in my nice, cozy house. It's no big deal. I'm not excited about it. I don't think it's cool. But out there, it's just like, this is it, man. Like you said, this is the closest thing to heaven on earth here. And it's a little cabin. Not even any food. Like,
nope.
It doesn't matter. It's just the bed, the shower, and the warmth.
And the thing that, they were so cool about hosting us because they just opened that place up, let us in there. They never asked for a credit card. They never asked for anything. And I actually had to text her the next day and say, hey, we're rolling out early. Or text her that night and say, hey, we're rolling out early. How do I pay you? What's the, I'll send me your email address. I'll email you an invoice and a link so you can pay us. I'm like, yes, ma'am, please do. She never sent the email. I texted her like a couple days later saying, hey, I never got that email. She never responded to I mean, I'd love to pay her.
Yeah, we didn't expect that either.
No, I mean, it was awesome.
That was amazing. So we actually get out of there pretty early.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't linger.
Yep.
Surprisingly.
So, we were up out of there, I think, right at sunrise or maybe even a little before.
Headed up to Spring Creek Pass, and this next section from Spring Creek Pass was mile 404.
Yeah.
From 404 to 447 was my personal low section of the whole event. Yeah. It was, for me, it was just terrible, man.
That was the old San Juans.
That was the San Juans.
San Juans.
That was a 17+ hour bike push.
Yeah.
And all it was pass after pass after pass after pass.
And every time you'd think, you'd look up ahead and you'd see it. You could see where the trail went because you're all above tree line. And you'd say, okay, that's got to be the last one. It's just got to be.
It's got to be, yeah.
And then you get on it and you look and you're like, dang, that ain't the last one.
Yeah.
But this one's got to be the last one. Then you get on top of that one. And it felt like it felt like there were 30 of those. I know there weren't, but there were a ton, man. It was.
And they weren't even named. There were so many of them. They weren't even named. And I remember trying to get up. This is where you hit the high point of the race is on this section right here. The high point is
13
Coney Summit at 13,222 feet.
Yeah.
And I remember trying to get to that and thinking, well, like this has to, like that next ridge right there. There's nothing around here higher than that. Like that has to be it. It's not it. It's not it. It's not it. And another thing that made this section so difficult for me is not only was it a 17-hour bike push, but like James said, through this section of the San Juans, there ain't a tree standing.
Mm-mm.
There's nothing. All right, it's completely open, and in almost the entire time, the weather was looming.
Yep.
I mean, literally from the start of the day,
it was a constant pressure of like, if we don't move, we're going to get hammered.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I remember when we did hit that high point, there was this little Asian guy, standing up there, through hiker, and like. Big bolt of lightning hits, and you know you're on the highest piece of ground around because it says, oh, this is the high point. And I'm like, holy crap, man. Here comes a massive lightning storm, and we're on the highest piece of ground around.
With nowhere to go. Nowhere to get lower.
And
or find cover.
That takes a lot out of you. Like, when that weather is looming like that, it's just this impending doom that you're holding. And see, you say, well, Chad, you're being a wuss. It's just a little rain. No, you don't understand. No. Like, you don't understand. If you haven't been up there and experienced weather up there, you don't understand why I'm saying it's impending doom. Because this weather will roll in and will crush you, like potentially kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And in every pass, there would be a storm hung in it.
Isn't that the section where there were like 2 or 3 different times where we would, there'd be a little rock enclave or something that we would get off the bikes and just bunker down for 5 or 10 minutes thinking it's about to unleash.
Yep.
And then you just kind of hunker down and it doesn't unleash. You're like, well, we can't just sit here all day. I guess we got to keep going. And we go, and then an hour later, it was just this constant pressure of, we got to get down off of here. But the only way to get down off of here is
to move through it.
And it just doesn't end. It's like you said, 17 hours.
Yeah. And we did get hit with a few hailstorms through there too.
Yeah.
So most of it, stayed just around us, but a few times it did hit us with some hailstorms, but luckily no super bad rain.
Yeah.
And the lightning is really the thing that I was always most concerned with up there. But I hated that, man. I was being real poopy pants up there.
Yeah,
I did that on purpose.
You were ornery about it.
I did that. I knew. I was aware that was creeping up in my head. And I just said, you know what? I'm gonna go with it, man.
I'm gonna embrace it.
Exactly. I'm gonna embrace this, man.
Every time you come, we'd get to a pass, and you'd come rolling up behind us, and I'd look back. You'd come rolling up. I hate the dang San Juans.
I was moving so slow through there too.
Just ornery.
And so for me personally, I know a lot of people, like, they love that wide open stuff.
I didn't love the impending weather, but I loved the scenery up there. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do like that. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I just get to feeling too small up in that stuff, man. I don't mind being in big country, but I want there to be cover and trees and animals, and there ain't nothing up there.
No.
Like you couldn't live up there. You couldn't survive up there.
No.
There's barely any water. There's no animals other than marmots in some of the rocky sections. It's just not a place for human beings to be. It's really not. I mean, it's an unsurvivable place.
It's rough. I mean, it's rough. To me, it's beautiful country, but it is. It's extreme. It's extreme terrain.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a haul through there, man.
That was the 100% without question the low point for me. And we finally make it to Stony Pass, which is aptly named. And of course, it doesn't just dump out onto the road.
Nope.
The trail like wraps all the way around this massive, just stony crag mountain. It's just all pure shale and nasty rock. And
it's that, what do they call that? Scree or something like that? It's just these chunks of rock that are slick and they give underneath your bike tire or your foot when you step on them. And it's just, that's a brutal section through there, man. Stony Pass. I remember that one.
We finally make it to the actual pass, and it dumps out onto a fire road, and Stony Pass is still at 12,592 feet. So we've been above 12,000 feet all day long.
Yep.
And it dumps out onto a fire road, and we're at 12,500, 12,600 really. Silverton's at 9,000. So we're thinking, okay, we got a lot of downhill to lose over 3,000 feet of elevation gain over the course of just a few miles.
Yeah.
And I thought this is going to be a nice cruise down into Silverton. I have never in my life seen a road like that.
The most unbelievable. How they built that road, I don't know.
How or why? Either one.
What is the purpose?
Because you remember it.
Oh, I remember.
It just where we came out on it, like that was pretty much a dead end.
Yeah.
Because you remember, if you looked the other way, away from Silverton, they had like started building the road, but it wasn't. It was just like they had started construction on it and then stopped.
Yeah.
I remember there was like an old bulldozer sitting down there, and we're going down this road, man, and it just goes straight down out of this canyon, and it is steep and rock. I'm talking about rock. It ain't gravel.
No, it's these big, like, I don't know, just big chunky rock.
And that's when you start having a lot of trouble out of your brakes.
Yeah. It's just, it was so steep, so sustained, and every turn was this tight hairpin switchback. And so you couldn't move through those turns with any speed, or you're just going over the edge. I mean, it's just, and man, I mean, I wasn't a third of the way down, and my brakes just gone. And that was the section where it really freaked me out, not being able to stop.
It freaked me out. I remember I stopped and waited for you, and then I followed you down the rest of the way, because this is not a place to not be able to stop. Because like James said, you got two choices if you can't stop. It's to turn straight into the embankment that the road's cut into and basically just run yourself straight into a vertical rock face, or to peel off the side of the road and have a 700, 800 foot just sheer drop into trees and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was brutal. And so what would happen was my brakes would just all but go out. And then if I could get stopped and wait for a few minutes, the brake system would cool down, and then I could go a little while again. And then I got to where I could start to feel like, okay, that back brake's getting really hot. Now I'll feather the front brake. Oh, that front brake's about to go. I'll go back to and I was just rotating back and forth the best I could, trying to keep at least one of the two cool enough that it would stop. And then there were a few points where neither one would stop. I'd have to get off the bike, just walk it for a while, let it cool down, and then get back on a ride. It felt like it took forever.
It did. It took a long time
to get down that, whatever it was, 5-mile stretch of gravel. It wasn't even gravel, whatever that stuff was.
Chunky, yeah.
It was like riprap.
They built the stone. They built the road basically out of the stone that they cut into the mountain.
Yeah.
To flatten out a spot for the road.
It was just brutal.
Yeah. And then get down, finally out of that canyon into a valley and have a couple of miles on some gravel just following along a river that dumps us out into like the dregs of Silverton. So I'm thinking Silverton, like it's a well-known town. I've heard of Silverton before. They run a big ultra out of there called Hard Rock. I'm thinking, this is going to be a cool oasis like a Leadville or like a Buena Vista or something. That was the weirdest place, dude.
That was an odd place.
I mean, it dumps us out into some back alleys of Silverton, and it's nothing but people living out of campers and RVs, like hundreds and hundreds of them.
And there's no, like, it's dark. And I mean, it was dark, but like there's no street lights, no city lights. Most of the campers and RVs have no lights. It felt apocalyptic almost.
It did.
Like you're riding through this area where something's come through and wiped out all humanity and just left campers everywhere. It was bizarre.
It did have that feel to it for sure.
Yeah.
But eventually it turned us on to kind of the main drag through Silverton there.
Downtown Silverton.
But it was so late. There was only one restaurant open.
Something saloon. You remember the name?
Some kind of saloon. I don't know.
But it was like a legitimate saloon.
Yeah.
It was like 2x8 rough cut lumber floors and bar and some tables
and we got in there like their kitchen was closing in 10 minutes, I think, something like that. So the waitress was like, if you're going to order, you need to order now.
Yeah.
And we did, and got a hot meal, and that was another big pick me up after such a terrible day through the San Juans.
Yeah.
It's like actually getting to have a hot meal. I know now we're in town. Surely we can find somewhere around here to sleep. Which that was a little more complex than we thought it was going to be, because this town, Silverton, they've essentially left it the way it was, I guess, back in the 1800s, like the mining days.
Yep. It feels like you're going back in time.
Yeah, they haven't changed anything. And well, I thought when I realized that's the way it was, I was like, this is really cool. Like, wow, these people are living this way. Like, well, later on I found out it's just a tourist town. It's not really that way because that's the way they've left it. There's a train that runs from Durango to Silverton every day and brings like
boxcars full of tourists.
Hundreds and hundreds of tourists.
Shop the Old West type deal? Oh, okay.
And that
tracks.
That's the reason Silverton is the way it is. So that was a big letdown when I learned that.
That tracks.
Later
and maybe a bunch of the folks that work, it's probably like a seasonal thing.
Yeah.
A bunch of the folks that work just stay in those RVs and campers and stuff kind of on the back side of town.
It's a tourist attraction.
That tracks.
Yeah. Because
it's so weird. It's like all of a sudden you're on this main street and it feels like you're walking down towards the OK Corral and, whatever town. And there's some lights and there's some hotels and we thought and stuff. But prior to like everything surrounding it is just bizarre.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was still cool for me in that moment because I didn't know it was a tourist attraction.
Right. You thought this is like a preserved
Yeah, I thought
piece
it was
of history
legit.
back here.
So we start looking for a place to stay, and we realize when James says hotel, like, we're not talking about the Holiday Inn.
No.
Like, a hotel in Silverton is this little slot on the main street where it's like an unmarked door.
Yeah.
And you walk through the door, and then there's like a stairwell, and you walk up the stairwell into this foyer, and there's a few doors up in the foyer, and some lady comes out of a back room and is like, "Hey, y'all want a room tonight?"
Yeah.
It feels like something you would literally see in an old Western movie. Yep. I mean, even that part of it, like getting a room to stay in. That was weird.
That was weird.
And you remember that lady that came out of that room when we walked up in there?
Yeah. Yeah. I thought she, so we walked up, we went to like 5 or 6 beforehand, and they were just like locked out. You couldn't get in, couldn't even find out if they had rooms. They may not even been real hotels. They may have been part of the tourist attraction look for the town or something. Now that you say that, it's part of the facade. But this particular one was a hotel. We walk upstairs, and there's just like a phone number on the desk where you check in. So we call that phone number, like, "Hey, we'd like to check in. Do you have rooms?" She's like, "I'll be out in just a minute." And then some lady comes walking out of this room, like half dressed, comes walking out of this room down the hall. And I just assumed, well, that's the lady who's coming to check us in. But she wasn't the lady that was there to check us in.
She might have been a prostitute, man.
It had that kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, that place may have been like half brothel.
Yeah, half
hotel.
Yeah.
Which is the way it was in the Old West.
Yep. Well, it's weird because she came out of the room and she was like, went into a bathroom.
Yeah.
It's like, well, my room had a bathroom. Your room had a bathroom. I guess her room didn't have a bathroom.
No, I don't think
I guess there wasn't a lot of bathing going on in that room.
Yeah, there were like 6 rooms, and they happened to have 2 open. And so James got one, and then me and Lando got the other one.
Yeah.
Lando just slept on the floor.
Yeah. Which, by the way, Lando has been with us. We would separate some during the days. He'd get ahead, or we'd get ahead, or he'd leave town earlier. But we have been tracking, and I think we spent the night at the same place just about every night.
Yeah, we
were out there. So we pretty much were tracking along with Lando the whole way, and just building some rapport and relationship with him. And just, I think both you and I just turned to just what a great guy, man. Just a great guy to do an adventure like that with.
He was tough too.
Tough as nails, because he had a variety of struggles along the way, whether it was his knee or his bike issue or something. It always seemed like, mostly his knee, I guess, but he kept pushing, man. There were a couple times I thought, I think Lando's done. Boy wouldn't quit.
Yeah, he was tough.
I love that.
I ate breakfast in Silverton the next morning. We did find a breakfast spot.
And that's where you, your food anxiety reared its head again.
Mm-hmm.
You remember? I don't even remember everything you got. I just remember you left town with a full breakfast burrito.
Yep.
Pie.
In a box.
That you tied to the top of your rear rear bag, and something else. I can't remember what it was. You had something else. And then we went from there
to the country
grocery store, and you loaded up there, man.
Yeah, that's where I bought so much stuff I couldn't even fit it on my bike. I had to throw some of the stuff I bought away.
Chad goes into a store. He buys a bunch of stuff, carries it out, puts as much of it in his bike as he can, and then just ends up throwing a third of it away.
Yep.
Right then and there.
Yep. I also bought a pack of chewing tobacco in that store. Because James and I like a little chaw every now and then when we're out on these bike adventures.
What did that cost you?
I think that pack of chewing tobacco was like $27.
Silverton, baby.
And it must have been sitting in that grocery store for, no kidding, like 3 years. Because when I opened that pack of chewing tobacco up to get a chew off of it, it was so dry. It was like I was just putting dried bark into my mouth. And you had to chew it for a good 10 minutes to get enough moisture with your spit in it to make it actually
to get anything out
like
of it.
chewing tobacco. Yeah.
$27, man.
All right, let's take a quick break. I got to hit the head, and then we'll take them through to the finish.
Sounds good.
All right, we're back. We've left Silverton. This, we got about, I think it's 80 miles, right around 80 miles from Silverton to the finish line in Durango. And I think this was the first time for me leaving Silverton. This was the first time that I felt like, all right, we got this joker in the bag.
I would agree with that.
Which is wild because, like, we only had 80 miles left. Like, for most things, when you get, like, halfway through or just a little past halfway through, you start thinking, all right, we're in our groove now.
Yeah.
Like, we're doing what we need to do. As long as we keep doing this and a catastrophe doesn't happen, we got this in the bag. But I didn't feel that until leaving Silverton.
I totally agree.
And we're on our last leg.
Yep. And
which is crazy, man.
And like 80 miles, I mean, it's a good distance, but it's nothing for you or I to go out and do an 80-mile training day.
No.
Right? Like that's not even like we don't even have to, it's not even a huge push. And so to think that, 150 miles out, we were still very much like, I don't know, man. The wheels could come off of this thing at any time.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy because I'm the same way. It was we were pulling out of pulling out of Silverton, thinking, all right, we just got to be smart and keep, but we're gonna wrap this thing up. We're gonna get it done. But I didn't have a lot of confidence prior to that.
I didn't either, man.
It's bizarre. It just crazy. Goes to the nature of just what a challenging and fluid thing this is because there's just so many factors.
And you know what, man? It may have been actually a mistake thinking that we had it in the bag leaving Silverton because we made a big mistake.
We got into trouble. Wasn't it that night?
Yeah, it was that night. Yep.
We got ourselves almost got in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
So coming out of Silverton, we had we had a pretty big climb, didn't we, coming out of there?
Yeah, well, a lot of it. Well, we had a big road climb.
That's right.
I remember.
That's right. Yeah.
All them. I remember all them big trucks, man,
that
like
one
coming
about
around the
clipped me in
corner.
the dang shoulder.
Yeah, they were.
Yep.
They were not interested in getting over whatsoever.
This is one of these tight mountain roads, just weaving up, and you have these 18-wheelers or big trucks pulling trailers and stuff coming down through there. And there was one I remember that we were taking a hard turn. We were on the inside. And this big truck comes around. He's got some kind of open trailer on the back of it, but that thing about clipped me in the shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
It was that close. It was, yeah. Yeah, I remember that coming up out of there.
Yeah, and then we got back into the woods, and I remember we went through a pretty big section where it was some sort of preserve or something where like you had to stay on the trail. Mm-hmm. Like there were signs saying don't get off the trail. But I remember it was beautiful through there too. I remember seeing a bunch of mule deer herds and stuff like that. But I actually got to do some riding that day, which is a big deal because if you remember the day before going through the San Juans, there was zero riding.
Yep.
And we had some rideable stuff that day, and nothing super extreme. I mean, we're still getting back up high from Silverton at 9,000. I see, was that Rolling Pass at 12,461 feet.
Yeah.
So we did have
a lot of climbing.
Did have quite a bit of climbing somewhere along the way in there.
That was that section that you really liked. That terrain, that how
was that day or was that the last day? Because I know exactly what you're talking about. It's where we got into all them trees and we crossed that bridge,
steep canyons, and maybe it was one of those 2 days that the terrain kind of turned from the barren San Juans to more of like.
I actually think it was both of those days.
Thick forest, and
we were in that kind of for that entire 80, well, probably 70 miles minus the last 10 coming down.
Remember, we had that big long. That was we'll get there, but
yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful terrain. We're back into the trees, semi-rideable trail, and just feeling good. And that was that day, James, because I remember we were passing all those water sources.
Yep. We got lulled into thinking there's plenty of water.
There's water everywhere. We're in here. It's super green, trees everywhere. I mean, we're crossing a creek every, mile or two.
Yep.
And so when you're in an area like that, and you're seeing a lot of water, you're not keeping your water on your bike full because that's more weight, and you're better off if you got a lot of water sources just to keep a bottle or two full and just stop and get water while you need it, because then you're able to keep your bike lighter.
Yep, especially when you're pushing it all the time.
But there was an odd place in that trail where you're in a lot of water, but then all of a sudden it ends.
Yep.
And then you enter this it was like a 18-mile stretch or something where there wasn't going to be any more water. And so we had pushed about 5 or 6 miles beyond the last water source before we realized, all right, we're running low on water. Let's pull up the map. And the mapping app I was using is called Far Out. If you're going to ride this, you got to get that app. But we pulled that out to say, okay, where's the next water source? And there wasn't any marked on the map. And it's getting late in the day. And we come up the trail, and it kind of merges into a fire road.
Yep.
And it's starting to get dark, and we realize there's no water, and we're running low. We're down to maybe a bottle each. And so we end up going off course and getting on that fire road to go a mile or two down the fire road to just check these little draws
Yep.
that are coming off the fire road. They're just little drainages, and we're just checking them to see if, okay, is there a spring in here? Like, maybe is there enough runoff that we can find a little seep or something and get water, because we don't want to ride 5 or 6 miles backwards to the last water source. So we ride down there and we're checking these drainages, not finding anything. Like, I'm climbing down off the road into these thick drainages, not finding any water. Well, then all of a sudden, the wind kicks up, like out of nowhere. You remember that?
Yep. I just remember because I remember because we rode downhill a couple miles looking for water. And every place that would be feasible for there to be water, we were checking, there was nothing. And then this wind starts kicking up out of nowhere, and it's just growing in intensity. So we decide, we're like, we can't just keep getting further and further off course. Turn around, start pedaling back up the hill to get back to the trail.
Yep.
And about the time we get back up to where the trail intersects with that fire road, it becomes real clear that it's about to just unleash. Mm-hmm. The weather's just about to let loose.
Yeah, and we were in the trees, so we couldn't see it coming.
Yep. Well, and it was just about dark too. I mean, it was. Yeah. You just couldn't tell it was coming.
Yeah, you couldn't see it, and when by the time that wind kicked up, it was like on top of us. And I remember coming back up the hill trying to get back to that trail. I remember my bike kept kicking my chain off into my spokes. Yeah. Because my derailleur had been bent. And so I'm stopping and fixing that. And finally we make it back up we're back on course now. But this storm is like, it's bearing down on us hard. Like, trees are blowing down around us.
Yeah. Stuff's fall. Yeah. I mean, it's legit. There's stuff, big limbs coming down.
And so, yeah, we make the call at that point, like, okay, it's dark now. We're going to hunker down right here and hope that this blows over. And Landon actually ends up taking his tent out and just setting up the rain fly. Yeah. So he left the inner tent out, just set up the rain fly, and we all three crawl into this single person shelter. And like, you're having to sit with your knees crunched up for us to all fit under there. But we're all thankful to be under there. We're thankful that he was generous enough to share that option with us. Yep. Because again, all we had was bivy sacks. And that's one lesson learned. If I ever did this race again, I would not take a bivy sack.
No, I wouldn't either. I'd carry a little.
I would carry the shelter 100%.
You're already heavy. And in terms of just what you're carrying, right? You already got to carry a lot of stuff. The difference between, like, you get a good lightweight tent, you might be talking a pound difference between the bivy and the tent. That's a good justification of an extra pound, because there were a couple times where we could have easily got ourselves in trouble. Yep. For not having enough shelter. Yeah. Yep. I would do the same thing. There's several stuff that I wouldn't bring that I brought, but I'd add my little backpacking tent.
Same here, man. You remember how cold we got under there?
I just remember, man, could not get warm. I remember just wind blowing, terrible storm.
I remember at one point you actually said, "Boys, this is gonna get rough."
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And I just remember all three of us just, like you said, as tight as we could be, tucked in under there, just waiting it out, trying to rest or get comfortable. You just couldn't get comfortable because the cold and the crampness. Mm-hmm. It was. Yeah, I was like, this could get bad here.
Yeah, because and we were not planning on camping there because we knew we needed water. Yep. So this was just like a temporary, we're going to wait out the storm. And we probably stay under that shelter for an hour.
Yeah, I
at
would
least,
guess at least.
maybe a
Hour,
little longer.
yeah, probably between an hour and 2 hours.
Yep. And that thing finally blows itself out, and it's still kind of spitting rain.
Yeah.
We get up, pull our rain. Well, we already had our rain gear on
Mm-hmm.
under there. Get on the bikes and start pedaling out of there to try to find water. And our next marked water was like 7 miles or something. And so, again, in that terrain, 7 miles sounds silly, but that's a couple hours out.
Which is so crazy because usually if I'm out mountain biking around here, 7 miles is like, that's 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
We're there. It's no big deal. But dark, spitting rain and cloudy, headlight, only your bike lights. Like you have very little visibility. Tight trail. It's just slow.
My skill level is not high enough to be able to ride that trail at night.
Yeah, it's just slow.
Like with any amount of speed. Yeah. And we don't go far.
Mm-mm.
Maybe a mile or so. And I notice off to the left just some kind of grass like growing.
Yeah.
And at this point, we're just checking anything that we see that looks like there could be water there, like James was saying. And I walk over there, and it's just a muddy seep.
Yeah.
And it looked like some thru hiker had gotten the same predicament we were in and had dug out a little hole about the size of a softball.
Yeah.
And water was seeping into that. And we all sat there and filtered water out of that little mud hole until we had a couple bottles each.
Yeah.
But it took some time.
Yeah.
And clogged those filters up pretty bad too.
Yep.
They slowed way down
way
after
down
that.
after that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Lando kept saying there's some campsites up here, like just backcountry campsites, like a opening with a fire ring or whatever, But they didn't exist.
We never saw them.
We kept searching for them. We'd kind of go back and forth, get off our bikes, look for them, never saw them. And finally, I don't know if I made the call or who did, but finally I was just like, oh, no, we're just going to camp here.
We just got to bed down. Anyway.
Yeah, like we're just wasting time. And that was the worst campsite of the whole trip.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it wasn't a campsite.
No, I mean, literally, I just found like there was a little
hole in the brush.
Clump of spruce trees, crawled in there, spread out my bivvy and crawled in. It was just, yeah.
Yeah, mine was sloped. It wasn't level. It was just, and it was raining still.
I didn't even cook a meal that night.
I did.
I just got in there and I just ate on whatever snacks I had because we made enough distance that night that I was confident we were going to finish
the next day. Yeah.
And so I was like, I need sleep more than I need calories.
Yeah.
Which I probably didn't, but that's where my head was.
Yeah. And that again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, we kind of had gotten in our mind that, okay, this is it. And that's why these mistakes were made. That's why we passed our last water source.
Yep.
We weren't tracking it.
Yep.
We were just pushing, right?
We had one thing on the mind.
Yeah, that's it. And that's why that cost us big, man. Cost us a lot of time. And you start doing things just like James said. He went to bed that night. He didn't cook himself a hot meal, didn't load up on calories. Well, you wouldn't have done that.
Nope.
If it was day 3,
yeah,
you would have made sure that you got a good meal in your belly, So it's really easy to start compromising on those things when you get toward the end, and that could be a huge catastrophe, you know?
Yeah, I found myself doing that. Like I remember thinking that evening before we ran out of water, we're running out of water, feeling like, and we may even had conversation about it. Like maybe we just push through the night and finish this thing.
Yeah.
And again, like that's one of those things where like probably at least me, I was thinking about that and what the strategy for that would be, not thinking about, hey, what's your water situation? Are you consuming enough calories? Are you and again, it's that lure of, oh, we're almost done. And you start to let your guard down a little bit. You start to let your mind wander, not as focused on the next critical things, and you make mistakes. We made a couple in there.
Yep, for sure. It's just something to be aware of and a lesson learned for sure. So needless to say, we didn't spend long bebopping around that little campsite the next morning. We got back on the trail. Still a lot of pushing the bike.
Yeah.
Wasn't much rideable. That was that last day. It's interesting to me. The last day was the second worst day for me. The first being the San Juans, but that morning we got up, and I don't know if you remember how far behind I got.
It was far enough that I waited, and then I thought, I'm gonna have to ride back and check on him because something must be wrong.
I missed one turn. The only turn I missed on the whole course. And then the only way I can describe it, I just couldn't get my engine going. Like for some reason, man, I'd go to pushing up them hills and I just couldn't go. Like I would have to literally stop and sit down on the side of the trail and eat something. I don't know if I had gotten behind on calories or maybe I had been conserving water too much.
Yeah, or got dehydrated or something.
Or what it was. But, man, I couldn't get my engine going, and I was lagging way far behind for most of that day.
Well, because we still were conserving water pretty heavy because we only filled up a couple bottles each at the mud hole. And then we camped, and you cooked, and we had some breakfast. So, we'd used up most of what we had, and we still had several miles before we were back at a decent water source.
Yeah,
you could have been dehydrated, but I could tell you were struggling to get going that morning.
Yeah, definitely going through the San Juans. I think I was struggling more mentally, but that last day, for some reason, I was struggling more physically. Like, why can't I push this bike up this hill? Like literally can't push it up the hill without stopping every couple hundred feet, and then we can't not mention, I don't know which one it was, if it was Mohawk Pass or Indian Ridge, but you remember one of those final passes. You remember how steep and rocky it was, man? Yeah. Like, one of the worst passes that we went through was right there.
Like, dangerous.
The last I think it may have been the last pass we had to go through.
I think it was.
But I remember looking way ahead and seeing Lando on the side of this terrain feature that looked like it was impassable and thinking, why is he up there?
I know.
Like, I don't see any route
to get to that point
to where he is, because he was pretty far out ahead of us because you had been waiting on me throughout the day.
Yeah, that was to me physically it wasn't as long. It wasn't a 17-hour push, but the terrain, that was the most difficult terrain we navigated the whole trip, because it was just so steep, so sustained, and
big slabs of shale and rock.
Yeah, where you're literally having to physically not just push your bike, but lift up your bike, set it up on a shelf, balance it while you scramble up to get to it, like that kind of stuff.
That's
right?
a good way to describe it. That's what we were having to do. Yeah,
that's what we're having to do. And you're what are we there? We're like 15, 20 miles.
20 miles, yeah.
From the finish. And so on a bike, that should be nothing. And so you're in this headspace of like, I just want to be done with this thing. And yet you've got this just really challenging terrain, mile after mile of it, that you
The worst.
have to navigate, and it's just a mind. It's just again, like, just starts crushing you.
Yeah, and I remember we got up into that final pass, and my brake pads were done.
Yep.
I had no brake in my front brake, and so again, the weather is again bearing down on
right
us.
down on us.
Same as every other day. We're up in this pass at 12,000 feet, and we're kind of in front of us. We got our final downhill from 12,000 feet. We got to go all the way down to 7,000. Well, I realized I got no brakes, and so we just stop in the middle of this pass with the weather bearing down on us. And I know, did you change your brake pads there too?
I changed mine too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I changed mine out too.
Swapped our brake pads out. You actually took your tire and wheel off, and for some reason it wasn't registering for me to take my tire and wheel off to change my brake pads, and I kept having the hardest dang time getting them pads in, man.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the crap? Why is this so difficult? And it's because I left the freaking tire and the rotor was up in the caliper. So I was having to work around the rotor to get the new brake pads on.
Yep.
But we got them on, and then we start our descent down into Durango.
And you know that, I'm just looking at the cue sheet here. This gives you a sense, like that section is there's some elevation loss and gain in it, right? It's not just straight downhill, but in total, between Kennebec Pass, like that Kennebec Pass section, there's a 20-mile section there with 6,608 feet of elevation loss.
Yeah.
And almost 2,000 feet of elevation gain. So, I mean, it's just, you're either going straight up or straight down.
Yep. That was pretty country through there, though.
It really is.
Once we got through that pass, once we got through that pass, it was manageable.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and it was game on, man, because we were in the final stretch.
We were last 20 miles, coming down out of those big mountains. After about 10 miles, you remember how the forest changed so much, like it was really cold and nasty up there and rainy, but we kept coming down, and eventually we got down, and it was like all like pines, and it actually got really hot.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a huge shift.
Huge shift. And I just remember those last, well, I remember some point in that stretch, I had a really good wreck. You didn't see it. You must have been behind me or something, and I got back on the bike before you got up. But I had a solid wreck, and I hit my head on like a stump or something. And thankfully, obviously, I was wearing my helmet. The helmet absorbed it. But I remember it hit hard enough that plastic piece that comes around like the back holds your helmet in place, where it attaches to the helmet right here, it popped. It didn't break, but it popped out of the helmet.
Make sure you stay under that mic, James.
Oh yeah, it popped out of the helmet, and I took my helmet off to check it to see, like, did I bust this thing? Because it hit hard enough that I was like, man, that could have been really bad. But then it turned to some good fast trail as we finished her out.
Yep. Yeah, and we rode in together, and again, you're right there at the end. You keep thinking, it's right here, it's right here, it's right here. And it took longer to get out to the actual finish than I think we anticipated.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You start getting down in areas, you're seeing more and more hikers who just have a day pack on, and you don't, that hikers with dogs, and like, we hadn't seen any of that.
Yep.
You don't see that stuff when you're out in the really remote areas. So when we started seeing that, we knew it was close, and just popped out into a parking lot, and there's a brook my wife and Jennifer, James's wife, and they had us a hamburger and some cold drinks, and
Yeah.
we sat in a gravel parking lot and ate a hamburger.
Yeah, that was the celebration. It was awesome, man, that our wives flew out there. They spent several days hiking and exploring a variety of different areas in Colorado, and then were there waiting for us at the finish with burgers and cold drinks, and there to celebrate with us. That was really cool for them to come out and do that.
And Lando was down there. He finished just a few minutes before us, I guess.
Yeah.
And that was that, man.
That was that.
Big adventure.
It was a big adventure.
Any big lessons learned that we missed or anything like that?
Man, I don't think so. You know, I guess I'd say I don't think so and then start talking about one. I think so. The big one for me was, and it's something, you know, we talk about over and over again, but the first half of my life, you know, if there was a movie of the first half of my life, it would be it could be summed up by like, hey, there's a dude that means well, but that gives up too quick. And the second half of my life, that movie would be very different. And this experience was just another opportunity to really lean in heavy to being able to push through adversity, to practice resilience, and to not allow those thoughts of, it's like we said, right, like I said, that day going into Cathedral Cabins where my mind, you know, I started thinking through excuses, right? Oh, well, my knee hurts. Oh, yeah, my knee hurts. Oh, something's probably wrong with my knee. This could be really bad. Maybe I shouldn't keep going, right? You start going down, and the reality is, did my knee hurt? Yeah, it hurt. My knee hurts all the time when I'm doing, like, who cares? It's working. I can still pedal. So how did I get to this place all of a sudden where now I'm contemplating giving up on this thing because my knee hurts? And, but it takes a lot now for me to get there, right? Like going out and doing a hard push, I don't get there anymore, which is great. But I still think there's value in finding that place wherever it is.
Yeah.
And for me, it was, 5 days in or 6 days in or wherever it was. But once I pushed through that place, the thought of quitting never entered my mind again. Right. And to me, that's like, okay, good. I found that place. I pushed through it. And I got another rep in of building that mental resilience, maintaining that mental strength, to not give up just because it's not fun and it's hard. And that was just a big reminder, lesson to me, because I had not gotten to that place, and it had been a while since I'd gotten to that place.
Yeah. Same here. I mean, I don't think you need to. Well, like you said, the further along you get, the harder it is to get to that place, and I don't think you need to be seeking that level of extreme challenge on a monthly basis, or even on a multiple times per year basis. I think you need to do something at least once a year, every year, that hopefully takes you there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of my goal moving forward is, instead of trying to do, multiple 3, 4, 5 different things in a year in terms of challenges, if you want to do that many, well, they're going to have to be smaller, right? So kind of my goal moving forward is just to kind of have one thing per year that's really, really big, and that will have to get bigger and bigger and bigger throughout the years in terms of the challenge and the duration of it. But I think that hits the spot, and it keeps it within the boundaries of like being a healthy thing. Like you're not, if you try to do that multiple times a year, you're just going to end up destroying your body.
Yeah.
Right. And you're just going to eventually find yourself in a position where you can't physically push that hard anymore. So that's my goal. And I agree with you, man. It's a good rep, and we have to continue to practice the things that we believe in, that we know work, that we teach to others. And if we ever stop doing that because we get lazy, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know?
Would you do it again?
So I would do the Colorado Trail Race again only if someone very close to me wanted to do it again. Like, and not you. I'm sorry. I've already seen you suffer through it. But like, you know, if Chili or Cornbread or Blake or my wife or all of a sudden one day for some reason said, man, I really want this to be my goal, I would do it again with them, just simply for the sake of being able to watch them and laugh at them as they went through what I already know is coming.
Yeah.
I think it would be totally worth it.
Yeah.
Just for the humor and the comedy that you would get to see. I highly don't recommend this challenge to anyone who wants to ride their bike.
Yeah.
All right. Or who is and that I think that was one of the major reasons so many people quit.
Yeah.
Because in this race, only I think less than 20% of people who start finish every year for a myriad of reasons. But one of the big reasons is because a lot of people who sign up for this race are very high-level cyclists.
Yeah.
Who have won. Did Abe finish?
Yeah, he did.
Abe did finish.
He did finish.
Okay, that's good.
Yep, he did.
There were a couple other. One in particular I ran into out on the trail. He was a world-renowned cyclist. And he quit the race, and he said he quit because it wasn't a bike race.
Yeah.
He was like, I ride bikes.
Yeah.
I'm not a hiker.
Yeah.
And so anybody who wants to ride their bike, I highly don't recommend it. Any of you guys who just want a just gut-wrenching, just grind of a challenge, well, this is one for you, son.
Yeah, it'll give you all you can eat.
Yeah, it will. Yep. You will not leave this race hungry for more of the bicycle.
Nope. You know, I think thankfully both you and I have put in a lot of miles backpacking and hiking, and it served us well on this specific adventure because that's why, you know, like Landon is a cyclist, and we were always making ground on him on those climbs where we're pushing the bike because thankfully we know how to hike. We know how to cover some steep ground on our feet. Now it's different pushing a bike than carrying a pack. I'd rather carry a pack than push a bike.
Yeah.
But thankfully we had that experience. I can totally see where someone who all they do is bike and they go out there thinking, oh, this will be a bike race. Negative. This is not real. I mean, I guess obviously for some of the guys it is. They figure out how to do it. I guess they're just running so light and they are so good on a
Their
bike.
Skill level so high, yeah.
That they figure it out. But I've been riding bikes a long time, and it wasn't something I was riding.
Yeah. No doubt, man.
So.
Well, James, thanks for your time today, man.
Dude, thanks for doing it with me, man.
Thanks
for getting out there and being a guy we can go out and do these crazy adventures together. I love it.
It was good, man. It was good. So thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. If you got something out of this, drop your biggest takeaway in the comments of the video here. I'd like to hear what you guys got out of this conversation, what you might have learned, or any questions you might have. Drop it in the comments. I might go in there and browse through them and respond to a few. So thanks again, guys. We love y'all. Nuff said.